Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee meeting for Tuesday, September the 14th. We have a number of guests with us this evening, and we welcome those as well as those at home. The first item on the agenda is the call to order. Second, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Anne, Kate, thank you. All in favor? Let's see some hands. That looks like it's carried. Thank you. That's on the next one. Yeah. So our next item is the approval of the agenda. I was just reminded by the clerk, and I'm sorry that I neglected to do this, but because we have a delegation this evening on 19 Elm Street and 13 Mountain Street, there is a report that is accompanying that. It's 7B on our reports. So I'd like to move 7B up to be spoken to with right after 5 delegations. They won't be making a presentation. We will just be receiving the report and then having Q's and A's. So can I have the mover and seconder? Are they okay with just amending the approval of the agenda to move 7B up? And Kate, you're okay with that? Thank you. So that's as amended. All in favor to do it as amended? I'll just get a vote on that again. Thank you. I'm going to go to Bianca now, please, to do introductions of our new members and our new faces on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I would like to give a warm welcome to all our new members. We are very much looking forward to your contributions and unique perspectives within our discussions. We wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and then we'll go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves just so you can get to know the committee a little better. And just for ease, I'll start with the new members, and then we'll go to members of council on the committee, and then existing members, and then staff. I guess I'll pick the first one. We'll start with you, Sarah.
Hi everyone, it's really great to be here. My name is Sarah Nixon. I am currently the public programmer at the St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Center. So I run the Public and Education Museum programs. I grew up in Grimsby. I've studied Grimsby's history during my undergrad and my Master's of Arts in Public History at Carleton, studying the downtown and how its character shapes our community identity. And I recently moved back to Grimsby in May of 2020, and I'm so excited to be part of the community again and to be a part of this committee. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll pass it over to Brian.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Reilly. I've lived in Grimsby for coming up on our family's first anniversary here in the city. Prior to that, I lived in Mississauga, and other than that, I've lived in Vancouver, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, lots of different places across the country, but really happy to now call Grimsby home. In my day job, I am the Associate Vice President for Safety and Risk at a company called Compass Group Canada. We're based out of Mississauga, but we work across the country, and I'm really excited to be a part of this committee here. I was looking for an opportunity to contribute a bit to the new community that my family lives in, and I'm always very excited about history and heritage. So really looking forward to working with all of you and learning a lot more and contributing to this.
Thank you, Brian. I'll pass it over to Pamela.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Pamela Evans. I'm a heritage homeowner in Grimsby. I have 2 other heritage homes in other communities. During the day, I buy and renovate homes, everything from the design of it to doing as much of the work as I can. If not, I bring in qualified professionals. I am a heritage buff in terms of I love heritage homes whenever on holidays. I like to visit them, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. And I'll pass it over to Mark.
Hi, folks. My name is Mark Brady. I'm a recently retired IT executive. I work in the mining industry and I worked at Facade here in Hamilton. I moved to Grimsby 5 years ago and I live in a heritage home down in Grimsby Beach. And I've been involved with the Grimsby Beach study that's been underway for the last year. And I thought it might be interesting to try something a little bit larger. So I volunteered to help out with heritage. I find home building and renos is a hobby of mine. And I think this is a great opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, and I'll pass it back to you, Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Bianca. Welcome to all of our new members. We're really excited to have you. And the committee right now, just to give you who's on the screen, we're missing Councillor Dunstall and we're missing member Olia Juricek, who's on a current leave of absence. But we have present with us Mayor Jordan, and I'll just defer to him briefly to say hi.
Good evening, everyone. Just trying to find my unmute screen. It's a little different when I'm not at town hall, but Mayor of Grimsby, live in a heritage home, renovated a couple of heritage homes now, and just very passionate about the history and of the community of Grimsby, where we had our first town meeting April 5th, 1790, which was the first town meeting in Upper Canada. Beat Niagara on the Lake by 4 years. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. I'll move to Kate, if you just want to give a brief hi.
Hi, my name is Kate. I am, I've lived in Grimsby 22 years. I too live in a heritage home in Grimsby Beach, and I'm in publishing and marketing, and I love heritage, everything about it. I think that we have a huge responsibility to care for these homes. Even if we currently own them, we're really just caretakers of them to keep them intact, to pass them on for future generations. So big responsibility.
Thanks, Kate. And Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Brabant. I'm a history fanatic, part-time teacher at DSBN. I'm on the board at the museum. So I'm originally from Mississauga as well. So welcome Mississauga and Brian. But I've been in Grimsby for a while now, and it's great. I love it here.
Thanks, Anne. So that gives you a bit of an overview of our committee, and we've got a big job ahead of us. I think Bianca knows that the workload is phenomenal, and the staff that we have behind us to help support it. Bianca, Andrew Bowers, Andrew is on the screen as well. Antonetta, sorry, the Director of Planning, Building and Bylaw. I should have introduced her as well. Antonetta, would you like to say hi for a moment?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'd just also like to extend a warm welcome. We are so pleased to grow this committee as we continue to grow and advance the heritage program here at the town of Grimsby. And we're happy to have fresh faces and also just continue with the excellent momentum that we've been able to accomplish in the last year or so.
Thank you. Does Bianca or Andrew want to say anything about themselves or?
Sure.
First, Bianca.
Okay, so I'm Bianca Vrecchia. I'm the town's heritage planner. My background is in architecture, heritage conservation, and heritage planning. I'm an alumni of Willowbank, Canada's premier conservation school, and I also have my professional certification from the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals. And I will pass it over to Andrew.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Bowers, and I am the Heritage Intern at the town of Grimsby. I, as well, am an alumni from Willowbank School of Restoration Arts, and I do have a background in heritage conservation and heritage planning. And I also had the opportunity recently to work on the restoration of the stained glass windows at Massey Hall in Toronto, as that progresses to opening in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that covers everybody. If I missed anyone, put your hand up and speak, because I could be forgetful. I think I got everybody. The next item on our, so what I'm going to do is there's no motion for that. We're going to move to delegations, which is the next item, number 5 on the agenda. We have with us tonight a number of representatives from the Wolverton, it's called, or Castle Point Numa, which is the developers and the parties that are working on the Wolverton development. And present with us tonight is Elsa Fincello, Jasmine Froelich, Harley's not with us tonight, Philip Evans and Emily Collins. Now, I understand, Bianca, that we're not having the delegates speak, but they will be available to answer questions with the report, which we've now moved up that planning staff will be presenting. Is that correct?
Yes. So through you, the chair, Councillor Bothwell, we've received a application. I'll just wait for Andrew to get that on the screen. We have some pictures for the committee. So the town has received an application for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment for the property at 13 Mountain Street and 19 Elm Street, which includes the retention of the 2 heritage structures located on the property. Staff requested a heritage impact assessment, arborist report, and archaeological report be submitted with the application. Additionally, in accordance with the best practices within the town of Grimsby, a peer review was conducted on the heritage impact assessment by a heritage professional. All of these documents were provided to the committee for their reference. Staff have provided comments within the recommendation report, along with 9 recommendations that are recommended to be endorsed by the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee and approved by council to ensure the successful adaptive reuse of the 2 important heritage structures within the site. I'm going to go over the 9 recommendations for everyone. So the first recommendation is as follows. Staff recommend the retention of the original circa 1880 building fabric of the Wolverton House and the church building, and that the 2 heritage structures, 19 Mountain Street and 13 Elm Street, be designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that the town enter into an agreement with the applicant to designate these structures, and that the applicant agrees to not object to the designation. Recommendation number 2. Staff recommend the restoration of both the Wolverton House and the church building, including general masonry repair and cleaning, be conducted in accordance with best practices outlined within a conservation management plan. Recommendation 3, staff recommend that the HIA Heritage Impact Assessment be updated with a full review against the Ontario Regulation 906 for the carriage house. Staff recommend that if it is determined through the Ontario Regulation 906 that the carriage house does not merit designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, that measured drawings of the carriage house be submitted to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that professional photo documentation be conducted for both the carriage house as well as its placement within the surrounding landscape, and that these documents be shared with the archives for their records. Recommendation number 5, staff recommend that a heritage conservation plan be submitted during the site plan phase of the application to address any potential disturbances to the heritage properties, including the following precautionary measures. Construction, hoarding, monitors, and other conservation measures as needed. Recommendation number 6, staff recommend that securities be taken for the conservation of the masonry restoration to ensure the appropriate restoration of the heritage fabric, and that the restoration strategy be detailed within the Heritage Conservation Plan. Recommendation number 7, staff recommend that the proposed generous setback and generous green space be maintained within the site plan phase of the application. Recommendation number 8, staff recommend that the top 2 stories of the proposed development be stepped back and that appropriate materials be used to blend the modern layer into the established streetscape. And the final recommendation, number 9, staff recommend that the materials, massing, and height be addressed during the site plan phase of the application in accordance with best practices in consultation with regional urban design staff. So on the screen, you can see we have 2 pictures here. So this is the existing condition. You can see both of the heritage properties. On the site plan to the right, you can see the orange, which is where the building is being proposed, and you can see how that generous setback doesn't engulf the heritage buildings, and then that green space in between, as well as keeping the buildings in situ to help maintain the contextual value along that streetscape, are all in accordance with best practices. And we are recommending that this placement and this proposal and the setback be maintained during the site plan. So even if alterations are made to the building, we'd like to see this maintained. So those are some of the staff recommendations. The committee is welcome to add, and we can have discussions about the ones that were included. This is a picture of what it looks like, the proposal. And then the applicant and their associative technical staff are up here to answer any of the committee's questions.
Is that the end of your presentation, Bianca?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Andrew can maybe stop sharing so you can
Please.
see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. The report is quite extensive. There's quite a bit of detail in it. And I believe the Heritage Committee received it late Thursday, early Friday for consideration. So I would ask if there's questions from members of the committee with respect to the report that's provided in, or to the delegates that are present this evening. Any questions on the staff recommendations as well in the report? Pamela?
Thank you, Chair Bothwell. Will there be an archaeological study done on the property as well? And I'm just wondering about the integrity of the buildings. They're proposing a 2.5, I guess, underground parking lot. And I'm wondering about the integrity of the 2 existing heritage properties during that time and what the process will be to protect them.
Elsa, do you want to respond to that one? Thank you.
Sure. Hello, my name is Elsa Fancello. I'm the VP of Planning and Development with Castle Point Numa. I guess in regards to your first question, an archaeological stage 1 study was submitted as part of our first OPA and ZBA submission to the town. We're currently in process of preparing a stage 2 as recommended by our consultant ASI. In regards to your second query in regards to parking, our below grade parking garage actually doesn't extend to the heritage buildings. It's only under the new development in order not to impact the integrity of those heritage structures.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess what I'm asking, will there be a vibration study done then throughout the period of the development?
So typically that's, maybe Philip, you can speak to this as part of the conservation strategy, which is submitted as part of the site plan approval stage. There's a number of technical requirements that our heritage consultant will recommend as we advance work based on their detailed analysis of the 2 buildings. Maybe Philip, you can explain that a little bit further.
Absolutely, and Pamela, it's a really good question, because we want to make sure these buildings are in good shape and that there are adequate protection measures as we go through construction. So I would say, for starters, in the detailed conservation management plan that's being requested, we'll have a chance to describe protection measures for any and all the features. And in that, we get a chance to get into some of the nitty gritty with the engineers about staging and phasing. There's tolerances that we're quite familiar with in building close to existing structures. Everything from not wanting to compromise the bearing capacity as we get close to any existing footings or foundations, to managing the equipment and any retention that's required for the parking structure. In that, we'll submit some detailed information about the state of the building alongside a kind of sequence of how the work plays out. I can say that it's actually quite uncommon to get vibration of this kind, unless we're dealing with large caisson equipment, which I think we'll get a chance to outline in detail. But many of those protection measures will be outlined in the conservation plan, and they actually get fed into any of your building permit approvals as well. So that's something I can say for starters, that we'll be paying quite a bit of attention to. In answer to your first, I think, just question, the buildings are in really good shape. These are very solid buildings. They've been standing for more than a century, and they're gonna stand for much longer. So thank you.
And I should just add, when we retained the property in 2018, we've made a number of investments in those buildings just to reinforce them, both exterior and interior.
Thank you. I've noticed when I walk by them, they are in good shape. Thank you.
Any further questions, Pamela, on to the delegates?
I'm good for now. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell.
Anyone else on the committee have questions? Kate?
So are we only to ask questions now? Can we have comments, or do we do that later?
This is your opportunity for both comments and questions, because there will be a motion to accept those recommendations following this.
Okay. I have a couple questions and some comments. The first one I'm going to do is a question. I watched last night's presentation too, and a comment that was made at the end made me ponder. I'm wondering why this is the process we are undergoing, is designating these buildings with the development fit, like with this development. Why the reason I asked that question, why aren't we designating pre? The reason I asked that is because it was mentioned by the architect yesterday about they're requesting 7 stories in an area zoned for 4 stories, that council has the ability to go up to 6, and that if they don't have 4, aren't allowed 7 stories, that they potentially could do more of a squat build, do away with the heritage buildings and get there and fill. That's not what they want to do, but it was an option. And possibly, I'm wondering, I feel like, I know when this first came out, it was said right away, like when we started hearing about it, that they were very keen on preserving heritage. So there wasn't really an urgency to move forward on designating these buildings. But when we're in a situation where we say, we'd love 7 stories, if we can't have them, maybe we need to rethink keeping these heritage buildings. And I'm just wondering, are we doing this a little bit backwards? And when I asked that, I also asked that because I'm looking at the report. I'm also looking at the peer report, and I'm seeing no mention in the original report of the heritage building that is designated at 16 Mountain Street. It's mentioned in the peer report, but not in the architect's report. And then in the peer, and they don't mention any of the designated or the listed buildings either in that first report. But then when I look at the peer report mentions 2 listed buildings. But if you actually look at our website, there are 16 listed buildings there, 14 of them on Mountain Street alone, and 2 of them on Elm Street. I'm just going to list them: 30, 33, 32, 31, 30, 29, 27, 25, 26, 23, 22, 21, 19, 11, and 10 Mountain Street are listed on a list that we say, this is kind of important stuff that we got going on here. And then 19 and 24 Elm Street, it's not mentioned in the peer review or the other. And it made me think, we've already established this is a district, kind of, that, and maybe I'm using the wrong term, district, that has some valuable architecture in it. So I feel like we're going about this process the wrong way, where the power is not in our hands. And I know that's not, that's a kind of I'm not trying to say that in a confrontational way at all, because this is we're working with people that respect heritage and are hoping to move forward to save these properties, absolutely. But I feel like when I look at the drawings in the original report and I see them asking to take away part of the church, I look at the roof line of the original, the first building, the one where the H&R Block, I think, is in it. And I see that we're losing some of those dormers on that roof line. They're coming off. And I'm just wondering, are we doing this a little backwards? Where are we establishing, like, are we designating it first? Or like, are we establishing what is valuable on that property before we start tearing down, parts, or deciding that we're going to tear down this part of a building? And I believe the peer review mentioned that in their report, that maybe we should be establishing what's valuable before we, you know what I mean? Like, I know that this is a long process, but I just feel like it's a little bit backwards. So that's what it's kind of a long question. And I'm through you, Councillor Bothwell, I'm thinking that it's to Bianca. Why are we going through this process in this way? Like, I mean, I feel like we didn't push designation before because we were told that the builder loved heritage and they were keeping those heritage buildings. But last night I felt like it was, we want to have 7 stories. If we don't have 7 stories, well, there's other options, isn't there? And it wasn't in a confrontational way, but it was out there. And so I'm just wondering, like, is there a potential if we don't give 7 stories down the road that we're going to have a more squat build, no heritage buildings in there because we didn't designate them pre? And if we can designate them after as a 7-story, why can't we designate them? There's value in them still. So that's my question, is why are we doing it this way? It just seems a little backwards.
Bianca, you want to add to that? And maybe just to add to that question, if we do it in conjunction with, as the recommendation is, with the development, will that change the designation report you're writing, or are you writing it with the viewpoint of being developed?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Elsa, did you want to speak first to it, or did you want me to provide some clarification?
Well, I think you're best kind of equipped to talk about the process, but I just want to clarify that comment that that we would do kind of swap out our proposal for something else. I think we would definitely, because we're trying to achieve quite a bit on site, including the preservation of the 2 heritage buildings, the inclusion of below grade parking, creation of a community hub, a very generous plaza space. I think that if it's not in a 7-story form, we would need to relook at the site. I don't think it would, I think we would still make efforts to preserve the 2 heritage buildings, but do we create a large plaza space? I'm not sure. It's, again, that's not the type of development that we envision for the site. We see a tremendous amount of value of creating a large gathering space in the core of that site, and to ensure that the heritage buildings are restored and continue its kind of legacy on site and stand proud on the streetscape. So that is our vision, and I just, it's in all cases we would not demolish those heritage buildings. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's not our intent, and that's never our intent. We see a lot of value in those 2 buildings, and to create another life for them. So maybe Bianca, you can speak to the process.
Sure. Thank you. So through the chair, Kate, I just wanted to reassure the committee, we do have the section 27 protections on both of the properties. So they're both under demolition control. So if they did decide to demolish the buildings, we would step in, and we already have conducted an evaluation against the Ontario Regulation 906. And it was within the report that we already found that they meet the merit for designation, and we would move forward with a designation for the properties if they were an immediate threat. So, and just to add, that's the proactive nature that we have chosen as a committee to move forward with. And that's what the important thing is to have in place, because we can always move forward to the next level of protection. But if we didn't have the register, then we would be reactive. But right now we do have that initial protection, so there's no immediate threat.
Philip, did you want to speak as well?
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful, Bianca, how you described it. And just for clarity, in our report, the designation is a separate process than the approval of the application. So regardless of whether there's an application or not, it's the municipality's right and ability to move on that designation, irrespective of what the proposal might be. And Kate, I appreciate your point about let's get the value right first, and then talk about how we might bring about change or understand impact. It just so happens in this process, and look, we've been involved with projects that have taken every sort of path. In this process, there's actually quite a bit of alignment between the items and features of the site that have been understood to have value. That's something that the town has done research in the past on. We've come forward and offered our opinion, professional opinion, and that has been reviewed and commented on by a peer reviewer. That's a great chunk of opinions there that are all completely aligning in a similar direction. So I think that's a real positive piece, one that informs the process that you're on right now, the town is moving forward on. I would also say, to your point about adjacencies, I think that's a good point. And it was something that we picked up in the peer reviewers' comments as well, and really appreciated it. Just to be fair, many municipalities define adjacencies maybe different to others. So we've taken note, and Bianca's given us direction on what would be entailed for review on that adjacency. And again, having regard for that, I think, quite important context that you do have here, Kate, in this pocket. So I hope that offers some clarity.
Kate.
Thank you very much. I just want to just expand a little bit on my concern about the area having those 16 plus 1 area, the 16 listed properties all along that stretch there. The listed properties that are historic buildings that we have said are valuable to our town, they're all along there, plus the 16 Mountain Street that is a designated property. I just think that there is a visual historic character there. Very modern building is you're wanting to differentiate. I understand that you're wanting to, so that those heritage buildings stand out. I understand that mode of thinking, but the mode of thinking that I more lean towards is that there's a distinct character in that community of 16 listed properties and 1 designated property, just that we've listed so far. There's a number that we haven't even listed. And a modern building will drastically change the character of the area. Yes, absolutely. Those 2 buildings are going to jump out against this drastic difference that changes like a fundamental character of the area. And from a historic standpoint, that concerns me. It just, and I know that with the Century Building, we worked really hard with the planning staff and the builder to create a heritage looking build, still modern and cool, but feeling heritage. And I know there weren't necessarily historic buildings sitting in front of them, but they're sitting adjacent them. And we still saw value. And I know the planning staff has mentioned numerous times in our meetings, like for instance, with the building that is being proposed in front of the Slessor building to go modern so that it doesn't compete or nobody thinks that it's mistakenly thinks that's a heritage building, but that's just one mode of thinking. And I don't necessarily think that mode of thinking is the mode of thinking that the general public feels. I think they want to keep it feeling like a heritage town, even if there is a large building behind it. I love the idea of like off heritage, having some intensification in the core. I think there's lots of things to deal with, but I think that a building that fits there would be better suited. I like when I'm talking about design. And so from a heritage standpoint, one of the things we look at is, does the height of that building reflect the other buildings in the area and fit in? And again, this area is zoned to be the same as like the bungalows across the street and the 2-story historic buildings, but 7-story is 5 to 6 stories way above the other heritage, and which makes it other buildings, but which makes it completely like, that's one of the things we look to. Is it a comparable height? Does it fit in? No, it's not going to be a comparable height because it is zoned for 4 stories, but 7 stories is a different story than 4 stories, and it's absolutely towering over it, not going to fit in as a heritage, from a heritage standpoint. And another point, one of the things I love doing is when I drive downtown, is the historic vista of driving down the Christie Street towards the escarpment. And that's a historic vista. It will change it drastically. 7 stories will drastically change it. And now I did hear last night that I wouldn't change it drastically, but I think it certainly would. But also not even only from the road, but from the 2-story historic buildings along Main Street, from the other historic buildings around it. It certainly does change that. And again, change is good, but from a historical standpoint, if we're trying to hold on to that, it definitely will change that. So it's just a concern I had. And I think that is, those are the biggest concerns I had from a historic, a heritage standpoint. Yeah, that's it from a heritage standpoint. I know we talk about lot coverage. And I know when we're going to put a building there, I know we're keeping these heritage buildings which take up lot coverage. We're having all this green space that takes up lot coverage. And then of course a new building takes up lot coverage. And so I know that I don't know what the lot coverage of this building is, but I feel like because there's so much other things like keeping of the heritage, having the green space, that it could exceed like historical lot coverage there, like from a historic standpoint, because there's so much more value. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the things we always look at is if this building is remaining the proper lot coverage. So I think I would be flexible on that because there's so many other benefits that are added through this build. So I think that's it. That's all I have. It's all my concerns that I have about this building.
Kate, I appreciate those comments. I know that was for the general group here, and I think we're going to keep that in mind as we go through and make the revisions to the HIA. I can say that on piece number 1 around the larger value of this context, I just admittedly we have not provided commentary on whether or not there's a district potential here, and I would leave that to the city, the municipality to comment on. I have opinions and I have professional views on it, but we have not provided that commentary. I would say the second thing, in line with your question about what is best practice, what was also described by the peer reviewers, and what we often recommend as part of our review as heritage architects and planners. And look, we get a chance to work in all sorts of municipalities across the country, and the one consistent policy document is the standards and guidelines. And so we can look at what is, I think you used the word comparable, but the term that in the profession we tend to try and gravitate towards is around compatibility, right? And so like a change from a 2-3 story to a 6-7 story, it's a change. Let's talk about how we might be compatible and what could be done to mitigate that change. And so we'll try and use that language and that filter in evaluating.
Recording stopped.
So again, that's really great feedback, and I don't want you to feel as though that's not been heard by us. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're just gonna need 1 minute just to restore the recording. We've just had a technical blip, so I'm just going to go and restore the recording, and then we'll commence again. Just 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, we're going to try this again. Hopefully the recording will turn out. We've just got a few technical blips. So thank you, Philip, for those comments. Kate, did you want to speak again to that for a moment?
I just want to mention one more thing, just because we have lots of new people here. I just want to bring up one more subject, even though I'm fine with it. And because I just wanted to bring up the trees. That's something that we as a heritage group talk about, trees, because it's a living heritage. And so I don't really have a problem. I looked through the trees and I see that, a number of them are the black walnut, and they're native, but they're not in ideal spots. And I understand that you can't build a building around them. And they're not even in ideal situations where we have tarred right up to the base of these trees, which is very unfortunate. And maybe we should consider changing that practice. But and a lot of the other ones were Norway maples. And so I just wanted to bring that up just for our new members, that it's something we also discuss, the trees. And I really don't have a problem with the removal of those trees, especially since this project is really focusing on establishing green space, native trees, green roof potential. And I'm sure they would never tar right up to the base of a tree.
Thank you. Is any comment from the delegates on the trees? I think we're all good. Any other, sorry, okay, I'm going to go to Anne.
Hi. If I had pom-poms right now, I'd have been cheering on Kate for her comments. I agree 100%. I'm really not comfortable with the 7 stories. I've been on the Heritage Committee, I think the longest right now, with the absence of Councillor Gonzalez. And we've been talking about this area for years and years. And we've evaluated the possibility of a cultural heritage landscape and whether this would be something that we could do. And often we decided not, and that there were other areas of priority. But to Kate's point, there's a lot of heritage homes in that close vicinity. It would be really nice to see what this property would look like from those perspectives and what that would do for the streetscape. I appreciate the green space. I appreciate the setbacks, but 7 stories in this area, I just think it's too much. I think that it takes away from the historical value of these properties.
Delegation would like to respond to that?
Again, I would say that we will try and bring some clarity to this issue with some precision, because I want to make sure we hear it. And I think if it's brought forward through the standards and guidelines, like what is compatible, I think that's a real that's a focus that we in the heritage profession try to focus on, which is a little different from what the kind of zoning bylaw might sort of speak to. So we'll try and deal with those two head on, because I think if there's a couple of comments that have come forward, it's worth speaking to. I think at the same point, it might be helpful to give a little bit more other context, just maybe some precedents where we're seeing this in other small communities. We do a ton of work across various scale communities, and a solution in one community may not be the right solution in another. As a matter of professional opinion, it's one just as a because we've had a chance to dive into it and review it. I think there's a lot of effort being made to be compatible here, but let's dig into what that means specifically. And if we have to speak directly to height, let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to build on what Philip was saying, our team has placed a lot of emphasis to ensure that the height is appropriately sculpted on the site, to ensure that the heritage buildings stand proud along the streetscape, to maximize the amount of green space on the site, to create animated uses, to ensure that a lot of the servicing and parking and so forth, it's all below grade in order to maintain a very active and very comfortable pedestrian environment. We've also done a number of technical studies in order to ensure that views are protected, that sun and shadow are limited based on our analysis. It's our proposal, our massing proposal, because it's so set back from the street. The impact from the as of right it's essentially the same. So as we advance the process with yourselves, we will continue to look at strategies where the massing can be further refined and ensure that materiality is sympathetic to the heritage buildings, but also distinct in order not to take it away from the provenance along the streetscape. But again, I guess we agree to disagree, but we look forward to continuing to discuss this further, and for our team to provide any additional kind of technical materials to advance the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. I saw Pamela's hand up. Go ahead, Pamela.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I guess I agree with Kate and Anne. The one thing that was brought up last night, there were a few things. One was about the GTA, and you just said about comparable communities and that. I have lived in Grimsby for 30 years. I've seen a lot of change in this community. I also worked downtown Toronto years ago, and I lived there part-time. We're not a city, we're a town. And there's one thing about living in a smaller community, not to say that we're unique and special, but we are unique and special. I can leave my house and I can hike up the escarpment within 5 minutes. I can walk down to the water within 5 minutes. And I think there is an element of happiness when you live in a community like this that's on a smaller scale. And I think what the community would like to see, and I did hear from the owner last night that he did try to make a correction about what the architect had said in terms of not removing the heritage buildings. That wasn't the intention. I guess what we'd like to see, and it appears from all your community involvement and everything, you want to work with the community as well. And you are the first building that's going to look at where you're building with a heritage property like that, where you're really integrating it. We have another one down the road, but you have two of them. And we do have a large preservation of heritage properties in Grimsby. We received the Prince of Wales Award back in 2015. At the time, we had over 95% retention, and we still have very close to that percentage now. And we have that, not so much that these homes have all been designated, but we have it because heritage homeowners have preserved these homes. And your company purchased 2 properties with heritage homes on it, and they are very lovely, significant to the community. And I'm not opposed to the construction of the new development by any means. It's intensification, it's going to happen. I think what we'd like to see as a community, we heard from traffic last night, safety, is it happening without it really imposing on our everyday life as well. And I appreciate you're also going to be a rental property, which we haven't had likely a newer rental property in the community for many years. And it takes a lot longer to kind of recover your costs when you're a rental property, unlike some other developers that might sell immediately. You're invested in the community for a long time. And the things we look at are safety. Mountain Street, I know there was a traffic study done. I hike up Mountain Street. I do not do it during the week because there are dump trucks coming down there, transport trucks on a regular basis. I understand the region wants to bump the road back. Makes me a little bit more apprehensive about safety even then, because you're that much closer to the road. However, I guess what we're just saying is, you know, and I appreciate you're the first to do this, that you're going to be working with us. We appreciate that the change is going to happen. Maybe we just need it to be a little bit softer, and 7 stories seems a little harsh for us. And it sets a precedence that then we could have another developer that comes in and says, okay, we're going to look at 10 stories now. And where does the push stop? We do have down the road where we have along Main Street East. And I have to agree. I think that we have to look at 4 to 5, and going above that is a real challenge. And it's also, I asked about the vibration study, but not just on those 2 properties. What does it do to the surrounding buildings? And some of those have been designated, and just the care. So I think you're hearing us, and I think the best that we can always do when there is a new development is work together. And I have seen that from your company. You certainly seem to be willing to do that. And I think it's just a matter of us maybe not being hit with a 7-story building. So thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. I think I saw Sarah's hand up. Right.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell, and thank you to Pamela and Anne and Kate and everyone who shared, and especially also Philip and Elsa. I'm new, so I just have more of a question that I'm hoping that someone can clarify. If right now, like our downtown, we're saying we want new developments to only be 4 stories. I keep hearing that. I've read this in other areas, and maybe this was covered yesterday, so I do apologize. But so I keep hearing like we don't want buildings to go above 4 stories, and now we're proposing the 7-story building, which I think it's clear that a lot of the community, you know, does have questions about this, and it does set a dangerous precedent. And then Philip was talking about compatibility, and, you know, we want to have this conversation about compatibility. So I think I'm just asking, if we kind of have this precedent right now where we want buildings in downtown to stay at 4 stories, then how did it come about to ask to elevate this to the 7 stories, and where did this conversation come from? And I don't know, I'm just looking for some clarification. I also am quite concerned with the impact such a tall structure could have on our downtown, the heritage buildings surrounding the neighborhood there. But I also agree with Kate, when you're driving on Christie Street going downtown and you see the escarpment, to me that's quintessentially Grimsby. That's the character of the community, is right in that picture where you see the downtown buildings on Main Street West and the escarpment right behind it. And I think it would be so detrimental to the community to lose that view. So I think I'm just looking for clarification, and I do apologize if this was brought up in previous meetings, but just the discrepancy between the 4 stories and now the 7 stories, and what happened there.
Thank you. Elsa, did you want to respond?
Sure, and maybe I see that, well, Terry, the local planner, has also joined us today, so maybe she can provide some further color. But the site is designated downtown intensification, and as part of that, it's envisioned that it would support new growth and new development within this area. There's 2 tiers of planning documents. There's the official plan, and then there's a zoning bylaw. The official plan actually says that council has discretion for a 6-story building, and the zoning bylaw lays out a 4-story base height. We are seeking amendments to the official plan and the zoning bylaw to allow for greater heights in this location. But again, because of the uniqueness of the site, we feel that it's not setting a negative precedent, that it's meeting a number of town objectives for growth and intensification, heritage preservation, and improved public realm, so forth and so forth. So we feel that our proposed height is appropriate for this location. But in terms of policies, there is, we are seeking an amendment, and from, I guess, levels of importance, the official plan is really kind of the guiding document, and the zoning bylaw needs to be in conformity to the zoning bylaw. So it's really the official plan that takes, I guess, precedent in the overall vision for the town. Maybe Terry or Antoinetta, if there's any additional points you would like to add in terms of the planning policies.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell, through the chair. Yeah, the official plan talks about the 4 stories as a permitted height, and then it does allow for an additional 2 stories with a visual impact assessment study. And that was completed for the project that is on the Let's Talk Grimsby page. And we have received comments back from the Niagara Escarpment Commission that they are in agreement with the study that was done for that. So it is definitely in the plan. The zoning bylaw does have 4 stories as its height, and as Elsa was mentioning, they're looking for 2 amendments, one to the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw. So they're both looking for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Kate, is that pencil meaning a hand? Go ahead.
I just want to add something just for clarity for Sarah. This is merely a proposal. It's not a final. This is just a blue sky. This is what we'd love to have. Can we have it? And it's not necessarily what will happen. It's just a proposal. If they wanted to put a giant circus on that spot, Elsa could propose it. So it's just a proposal. So it's not final. That's all.
And I should just mention that there's also many layers in the approvals process. So we're only on, we've only made one application for zoning and official plan. We got some feedback from the various departments and agencies. So we're going to be responding as in a subsequent application, as well as feedback from the community and yourselves. And then as we move forward with the process, there's another kind of layer of detail that's captured under the site plan approval. So there's a number of, I guess, processes as you move forward the entitlement process, before you actually get your building permits. And ultimately the decision is council's to grant us our proposal to approve it.
Thanks, Elsa. Yeah, this was only the open house, and the next is the public statutory meeting under the Planning Act. So that hasn't been scheduled yet. And then there's a bunch of steps after that. So it's in its very initial stages. Did we have any other comments from any other members of the committee? Comments or questions? Sarah, go ahead.
I want to thank everyone for the clarification. I appreciate it. I did have, background, but I think then I really just want to emphasize that I'd love to see more, study and a look at how the height of this building will impact the community. I didn't see too much detail in the reports from the agenda, but particularly the views of the escarpment as well as the surrounding area. I appreciate, the step back and changes to how you want, the building to step back. And I apologize if I don't have all the language correct here, but I would like to see just more analysis of how it could change the views of that intersection from all different viewpoints in the neighborhood, just going forward.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm just gonna put you on hold for a second. Sorry, thanks. I'm gonna, Bianca, did you want to speak? And then I've got a few comments or questions to ask as well.
Thank you, Councillor Balfour. I was just going to add, Member Sarah, that all the studies are available on the Let's Talk Grimsby page. And then if you have any other questions from there, feel free to email us and we can help you from there as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Bianca. I went over the peer review by Leah Wallace, and I have a few questions that I think these might be for Bianca. What I noticed in the peer review, there's a few statements. I'm just going to read them quickly. She mentions that there's also little discussion of the original rear addition of the Wolverton house and the reason for its removal, other than to accommodate the new development. So she feels that should be scoped out better. I didn't see that in the recommendation. Assessment doesn't discuss significant cultural heritage landscapes in any detail or the impact of introducing a 7-story building in a predominantly 2-story area. This also relates to the issue of height and compatibility. The impact, as Kate mentioned, on the other cultural heritage resources in the area and the Mountain Street District have not been elucidated based on the contention. The council endorsed the cultural heritage landscapes. Issues of compatibility should be discussed as they relate to design and height. So these are deficiencies she's noting in her review. The heritage impact assessment requires a detailed discussion of the issue of compatibility and why the proposed development is compatible, relating especially to architectural styles, building materials, and scale within the district. Under the evaluation for completeness section 5, she talks about there's no discussion of impacts on the property and no visual description of that property and its context, nor are there are other nearby properties which are listed and designated. She notes that the impact of the development or site alteration is partially complete, and that in section F, that adjacent and nearby properties that are either designated or listed on the register, but not designated or not dealt with. So again, she's mentioning that further in. In the mitigation strategies section on page 36 of the report, she says design, massing, and materials are discussed in general terms, as are height and density. It says more details will be coming at the site plan, but it's difficult to determine if the proposal is compatible, not only with the buildings on the site, but also with the surrounding streetscape. And given the height, mass, and scale of the proposed building, a more thorough discussion is recommended. In her recommendations, based on the above analysis, the HIA meets most of the requirements, but specific recommendations for additions and revisions to the HIA include, and then she has 7 recommendations. Of those, the recommendations in the staff report tonight address some of them, but number 3 in her recommendation says a comprehensive discussion of the impact of the proposed development, not just on the subject properties, but on cultural heritage resource and surrounding area. This is particularly important given the mass, scale, and height of the proposed mixed-use building, which is considerably larger and taller than any of the surrounding structures, and given the proposed development's close proximity to residential properties, most of which are single dwelling units. So I think I heard Philip say that they're going to come back with a revised HIA. Bianca, can you just answer that if these recommendations in our peer review are expected to be coming back to this committee with a new an amended HIA?
For you, Councillor Bothwell. So what I have done is within the report, I have broke up all those recommendations and where they will be addressed. So in the report, it shows which ones will be addressed through the conservation management plan. And then it'll also show if it's during the site plan stage. And then it also shows, for example, the additions. If they are proposing to remove them, we requested a commemoration plan and for them to show us how that commemorative value will be showcased within the development if they are being removed. Typically with heritage buildings, the rear additions come and go. That's typically what happens, and the main form tends to stay. That's not to say there isn't value in those additions, but if there is value that has been identified, we would expect that to be shown through a commemoration plan, which we have requested. We have also asked that the HIA be updated with the recommendations from the peer review. And then there was a few points within the actual report that showed, for example, they had recommended that a 906 be conducted for the building, both of the heritage buildings, where staff disagreed because we had already conducted a thorough evaluation against the 906 and found that they merited designation. However, as Philip had said earlier, all parties have addressed there is value in those sites. So the report really speaks to each of those items and where they'll be evaluated.
Thanks. I'm just going to the staff recommendations in your report, and number 9 states that staff recommend that materials, massing, and height be addressed during the site plan phase of the application in accordance with best practices and consultation with regional urban design staff. I have a concern with that because this has come up before, that site plan control under the Planning Act, section 41(6), states that nothing in this section shall be deemed to confer on the council of the municipality power to limit the height or density of buildings to be erected on the land. So site plan control is too late. If we're looking at dealing with height, massing, scale, we have to do that prior to site plan. Do you agree with that?
So I was just going to add, we are able to add to these comments. So if that's one of the ones that we would like to revise, that we like, if we want to say that it's too high, then we can add that as our comment tonight. Some of the comments from the committee, we can put that in, and then yeah, so we'll address the masking and the height now.
So,
and then, yeah.
Okay, so we have 8, you're asking, the motion that I have is to accept the recommendations as they're written in the report, and there's quite a number of them. What I'm wondering is if the committee would like to separate the recommendations individually to vote on them individually, or to, if there's any amendments to those recommendations that anyone would like to put forward considering their comments this evening. I'm uncomfortable with number 9 because I think that that's one of the key areas that's been addressed by this committee. And I don't think that leaving it to site plan is the correct route. So I would remove number 9, but that would be up to a mover and seconder to suggest an amendment to these recommendations. So does the committee, and I'm going to ask for the will of the committee here, do you want to vote on block for the recommendations as per the motion in front of us, or did you want us to separate the recommendations individually and vote on them individually? Kate?
I don't feel comfortable endorsing all of the planning staff's recommendations. I don't even know if anything I said will be added to it. So I would like to separate them.
Antonetta, what are you thinking?
Your Chair Bothwell, I'd like to make a recommendation. Since we're expecting a revised HIA, why don't we wait on that? Have the committee think about it, because it's a lot to process. And then we can come back, revisit those recommendations with the revised HIA in hand, and people have had just a bit more time to get comfortable and maybe ask us any further questions. I'd also agree with the recommendation number 9. I think it's okay to have materiality and details of that nature dealt with at site plan, but the height has to be sorted well before site plan. So I think I would agree with that. I might recommend maybe that was an error, but materiality and things like that are like what we did for Century Condos through the Urban Design Review Panel, finessing of what it's going to look like, the finishes, the materials, that can happen at that time, but I wouldn't recommend that we leave height to that point. So why don't we just, wait for the HIA, then we can bring back forward a staff report, amend it as appropriately or as appropriate, and then everybody can have a chance to deal with that.
So what we could do is we can move to defer, or just to receive, instead of recommending that it be endorsed, that we can move to receive the report. Just receive, Antonetta, not defer. And then it'll be up to you to come back with it, and not, or we can just say receive the report and defer to until an amended HIA is brought to committee.
Yeah, I think that could work.
So Clerk Peter, if we look at this, the current motion that's in front of us is resolved that recommendation report HR 2136 regarding 13 Mountain Street, 19 Elm Street be received, and that it be deferred until an amended HIA, and be deferred for an amended HIA to be presented to Heritage Committee. Okay, is that okay, Antonetta? Can I have a mover and a seconder for that one? Kate, is there any other questions or on that motion, Mayor? Okay, before we. So everyone's comfortable with deferring. Can I ask all in favor then to do that with that amended motion? Okay, looks like all in favor, so that's carried. Thank you to, I'm going to just have another motion here quickly to receive the delegation. Can I just have a mover and a seconder, even though we really didn't have a delegation? Anne? And Mark, thank you. That's all in favor just to receive those delegations. Thank you, it's carried. I want to thank the representatives who are here this evening. Thank you for coming. I think we appreciate all your clarification and your time and efforts over the last 2 nights on this. We look forward to the next public meeting when it comes forward, and we'll look forward to seeing your revised HIA come back to this committee. So thank you again for your time, and we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is updates, and it's 6A. It's the verbal update on 15 Robinson Street North.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. So I have a verbal update for everyone about Robinson Street North 15. So our bylaw team our bylaw staff received a call regarding a large wasp nest at the property. And so bylaw was called to the site, and while they were there, they determined that there was some health and safety concerns with the porch and an addition on the heritage property. So this property is on the Municipal Heritage Register. And so the bylaw officer put an order in that the porch and the addition had to be removed due to health and safety. Myself and Andrew conducted a full site visit and evaluated the heritage structure. And we've taken pictures. The health and safety trumps the Ontario Heritage Act. So the addition and the porch has to come down. But we have met with the homeowner. We've looked at the A-frame structure, the original. And once the removed porch and the addition are gone, we can go again and take a look and see the integrity of the heritage building. But the homeowner has agreed to put up something compatible in the future, and she will be contacting staff to help her with that. And we also took some pictures of the porch and addition within the landscape. So that's just an update. And oh, I was also going to add, the homeowner did mention that she will be doing her best to salvage as much of the heritage fabric as possible, and she's hoping to use that in the new addition or porch as required in the future. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell.
Thanks, Bianca. Any comments or questions to Bianca on that report? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder to the verbal update regarding 15 Robinson Street North be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder? I have Sarah and I have Pam. Pam, do I call you Pam or Pamela?
Pamela, please.
I'm sorry. So
Thank
that's Sarah and Pamela. All in favor to receive? Thank you. It's carried. And the next item on the agenda is the verbal update on the plaques. I think that's Andrew.
Sorry, good evening, everyone. Just have an update for you on the designation plaques that we had put forward to Burlington Signs to create for us. As you can see here, we are very happy to announce that the designation plaques have been picked up from Burlington Signs. And we are finalizing a date for a designation plaque event where we can acknowledge our heritage property owners with the designation plaques that will be adorned on their heritage properties. We have provided some pictures, as you can see on the slide, but seeing the final product really in person does it the justice that it deserves. Seeing a flat image makes it difficult to appreciate. I just wanted to take a moment to thank Mr. Wayne Mullins along with the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee in reviewing all the information and materials that we brought forward to them for the plaques, and as well as Burlington Signs for their help and patience throughout the process. It did take time to get to this point, but I believe with the help of all the contributors, we have come upon a design that property owners will be happy to have on their properties in the future. So at this time, I open it to the committee for any questions or comments that they may have.
Thanks, Andrew. Antonetta, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I just want to add that in addition to the beautiful plaques, we're thinking about hosting an inaugural plaque event where we can invite the plaque homeowners to an event that of course is COVID friendly and COVID safe, but just to present the plaques to them. And, we'd love for the mayor and Councillor Bothwell and others to be involved on the committee as appropriate. So we're just working with the dates and the logistics and making sure that we do something where everyone feels safe and also gives some ample notice. So we're working on some invitations, and we're working to see what we can put together to have our first ever heritage plaque event. So we're excited about that, and we're working on the details in the background. As soon as we land on something, we'll let the committee know and send out RSVPs and things of that nature.
That's exciting. And Andrew, you might think that I'm like, this is like a silly question, but when I need to put something up like a picture on my wall, I get my husband to do it. So are we going to have, these people are going to get this nice bronze plaque thing, and they're going to go home and they're going to go, how the heck do I attach this to my house or my building, and where do I put it? And what do I use? Are we going to have help for the homeowners to affix these to their homes, or how give them?
So each of the plaque has a stencil that it comes with. It shows you where the markings are, where you need to put holes into the structure in order for it to match the plaque. If you're dealing with a masonry structure, typically you would want to use a mortar joint, because the mortar joints are the sacrificial piece in terms of that structure. And you would just epoxy those into the mortar joint. For a wooden structure or anything of that nature, you could pick the most appropriate spot, and then you could drill into the wooden surface, because the wood you could always repair after if you needed to, or yeah. So if any homeowners need any help with picking a spot, I'd be happy to go on site. I'm sure Bianca would be happy to join me to pick the most appropriate spot for them to place their plaque, just to avoid any confusion and to do the least amount of intrusion to the property as possible.
I think that's a wonderful offer of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think this is an exciting, it's really exciting that you guys have done so much work to get us to this point, because I know a lot of these have been outstanding since 2014 or later, like going back quite a ways, and people have been waiting patiently for them. So I think it's awesome that it's awesome that we've got to this point now where we can actually get to that stage of having that presentation. Thank you. Was there any other questions or or comments? Brian?
Councillor Boswell. I like your idea of getting someone else to post the plaques. I'm just wondering if it's within the scope of this committee to make the recommendation to actually work with the homeowners to determine the most appropriate place, and then just have them actually affix for them, rather than leaving it in the hands of them to do it themselves. Especially we're dealing with properties that are very sacred, and when we don't want to do anything. And I've definitely messed up many walls trying to do it myself. So I would just make that maybe comment and recommendation that we just take that extra step and put it forward to decide where it goes with them and do it for them.
Antonetta?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Bothwell. Brian, I love that idea. I'll have to say, having lived through this before and launching plaque programs like this in the past, there is a question of liability when staff does it on behalf of the individual. So we're going to help out as much as we can. We can help them scope the location. We'll be giving an instruction manual package. We actually have the screws and everything that they'll need to do it, but they do need to do it themselves from a liability perspective, or if staff gets hurt, they're entering on private property. So in the past, we've been advised to try and stay away from things like that. If we can, we'll try and help out as much as we can, likely up to them literally just placing it in the wall. But, if we got volunteers, maybe who aren't town staff, that might be a little different from a liability perspective. I just need to make sure that I don't lose sight of that lens when we're entering on private property and dealing with power tools and potentially, hopefully nothing would go wrong, but you always have to be cautious that that could happen. So just a consideration there.
Thank you. Brian, did you have any other comment?
No, I appreciate that context. I mean, you're talking to a safety professional here, so I know all about risk liability and protecting people's safety. So I appreciate that side, and additional context was helpful.
Mayor Jordan?
Thanks. I don't know what's wrong with my settings, but I can't find the raise hand. But anyway, just for my questions about the Main Street West property and Avonlea, because I just wondered how that's going to move forward because of the wrong plaque being on there right now, the Olivia Hare House circa 1910 that was incorrect. I'm just really happy with how it's turned out and happy that we've moved to this point on that property. But I just wondered if Heritage has been in communication with the homeowner and given them the correct history of that property. So that's all.
Antonetta?
If I can defer to Bianca on that one, she has more knowledge about.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Mayor Jordan, yes, we have all the updated drafts and everything ready for the research. We are working on that project we had to upload them all to the website. We're just doing the AODA compliance. So I know yours is one of the ones that's in the process of being updated to be added to the website. And then when we contact the homeowners for the plaque event, I'm happy to submit the updated history to them as well when we invite them to the event.
Great, that's good to hear. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the plaques from members of the committee? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder resolved that the verbal update regarding plaques be received. Brian? Seconder? Pamela? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. The next item is the verbal update on Main Street East.
Yes, so through you, the chair, town staff would like to share an update on the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District study project that has started. Town staff have been working tirelessly in the background to continue to advance this important project for the town. Town staff have set their initial startup meeting with Stantec to start the Main Street East HCD study. Town staff have been working in preparation for this by collaborating with Stantec on necessary information they needed to start the initial research. A Let's Talk Grimsby page for the Main Street East Heritage Conservation District will be included on the town Let's Talk page in the coming weeks. Town staff are also working on information materials that will help property owners understand what a heritage conservation district is and how it would affect properties within the potential area. The first phase of the study is the research and information gathering phase that will form the foundation of the study and help inform the HCD boundary. We have lost some time on this project due to the fact that the town has been dealing with high volumes of procurement documents and we're without a procurement manager for a while. Despite this, we have been able to finalize the contracts and put everything in place so that the study can start. So I'll leave it to the committee to ask any questions or if they have any comments about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Any comments or questions from the committee? Pamela?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. When they go through the process, are they engaging directly with the homeowners while they're proceeding with this study?
There will be public participation through the research and information gathering phase. Yes, there will be.
Okay, I'm wondering about specifically with homeowners and that directly without it just being a public meeting.
Are you referencing a one-on-one?
Potentially involved or impacted.
Yep. I'm not, I could ask Stantec about that. I'm not sure if they would do one-on-ones with individual property owners. I'm not familiar if they've done that in the past. That would be a question I could ask them during our initial startup meeting to see if that's a possibility. I see Antonetta has her hand up. If she wants to speak to this matter as well, I'll let her do that.
Thanks, Andrew. Through you, Chair Bothwell. Usually once we have our initial kickoff meeting, we'll get into the details of what that engagement plan would look like. In this case, we're likely going to recommend one-on-one interviews with the properties being impacted. So we just need to sit down with them, go through what has worked for them, what we have from our experience that has worked, and then come up with the detailed engagement plan. So we don't have that, but we'll be looking at everything from one-on-ones to perhaps a committee being put together for Main Street, like an advisory committee made up of people who live in the potentially impacted area, similar like what we did to Grimsby Beach, because we really want the voices on the ground to be part of the process. So yes, all of those are possibilities. And once we firm up the engagement plan with the consultants, we're happy to share that. But what I've seen done with HCDs in the past are surveys being sent to the potentially impacted homeowners, one-on-one interviews, and then larger general public gatherings where other people outside of the impacted area can also be involved. And then there's also broader social media and engagement campaigns. So it's likely going to be a combination of all of those. We just haven't landed on which exactly yet. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Just in engaging with other homeowners along Main Street East, I think it would be beneficial that because we live in a, this part of Main Street is certainly a combination of businesses and homes, and it's an interrupted street in terms of heritage as well. For instance, the stretch where I'm along, there's 6 properties. One's an empty lot. The others have all been businesses at one point or time. There's myself and another one that are strictly for homes. And so I think it's beneficial that homeowners are involved. And I also, I think to inquire about what the end result is, because the one thing with me coming onto this committee, I would like to also bring to the committee is maybe some better tools for homeowners. For instance, the insurance, I think that's a big one that needs to be addressed. And I think, you know, if we're going to proceed or that homeowners need to be reassured that they're going to be able to obtain insurance and be protected.
Thanks, Pamela. Antonetta, perhaps you can clarify the purpose of the study, because there's 2 phases under the Act, right? The study is just to determine the boundary and whether an HCD should be recommended to progress, at which time the HCD would involve a lot more engagement with the community to define what that means. So can you just maybe clarify what just the purpose of the study itself is?
Yes, through you, Councillor Bothwell. So this study is really looking at doing research into a potential boundary, if it could even qualify for a heritage conservation district. Then should it qualify, or should a portion of the area that they're looking at qualify? That's where the deep community engagement happens, because then there's people being impacted. Right now, we don't even know if it qualifies, what portion of it may or may not qualify, and what boundaries make the most sense if we proceed. So we're very, very much at the early stages. And if they don't find enough to proceed, then we may not end up with the district. We may end up with a district at a certain size, certain scale, dimension. So all of that is yet to be determined. But really at that next level is if we proceed, they decide, yes, there is potential for an HCD here. It's defensible. There's enough heritage area. Then we can move forward to the next component, which would be the creation of an HCD and the guidelines. And that's where the deep community engagement happens as well.
Okay, thank you, Antonetta.
Thank you. So yeah, so I'm glad to hear that it's moving along and that you've had a lot of background discussions, Antonetta, and that we're looking forward to seeing that on the Let's Talk Grimsby website in the next few weeks. So are you expecting to see something posted up there by the middle of October? Do you have any idea when you think that might be available for the public to have a look at?
I think I could jump in, Andrew, if you don't mind. I think that's reasonable. We're also working on frequently asked questions and what is designation, what is HCD type brochure, like we did for what is designation and what is listing. So it may not be completely full with everything, as with the Grimsby Beach. The more we did, the more we populated the site, but we should have something by mid-October.
Okay, great, perfect. Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, so what we have here is a motion to resolve the verbal update regarding Main Street East be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? I've got Anne and Kate. All in favor? Bunch of hands, good. It's carried, thank you. Now we're going to move to reports. 7A, the Heritage Grant, Nixon Hall, 262 Main Street West.
Through the chair, I'm just going to share my screen here. I just have some images to show the committee. So the owner at 262 Main Street West, also known as Nixon Hall, has applied for a designated heritage property grant. Two Rivers Restoration from Guelph, Ontario, as well as Overbeek Masonry from Pelham, Ontario, were both contacted to provide a scope of work and quotation for the masonry structure. Historic masonry structures like Nixon Hall frequently need repair or work due to natural weathering as well as prior faulty restorations. The goal of the repairs are to restore the original structure to its original standing while restoring structural integrity. The proposed works include repointing foundation above grade, clean stone banding, brick cleaning of paint and carbon staining, removal of previous cement pointing, replace damaged bricks and repoint, as well as significant repairs to chimneys needed to fix spalling bricks caused by cement mortar from previous repair. All replacement of damaged brickworks will be replaced with reclaimed in-kind brick to match existing. I will now ask the committee for any questions or comments that they have on the report concerning the Heritage Grant for Nixon Hall.
Thanks, Andrew. Pamela?
I just wanted to ask the scope of work that maybe this homeowner needs to do to bring this home back up to a standard. What's involved outside, because it looks like the roof needs to be done as well. Yep. And then some work on some windows. And is there also significant work inside?
So I can speak to some of those. The roof is due to be repaired. They are replacing in kind with the cedar shingle roof. So that is on schedule to happen. They have been doing work on the interior plaster. They have had the plaster work restored, so that continues to happen. And they are committed to restoring the property in whole. So the windows would be on that list as well. The owners are very committed to making sure that this property remains a focal point for the community.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Pamela?
The grant, is this the only grant we have for the community?
It is a matched grant with the the Niagara region. So each contribute to this grant to have a $30,000 grant for the property. And this is one of the only ones, I believe Bianca can speak to this as well. I think it's one of the only ones specific to designated properties within the town.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Bianca.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I was just going to add, we do have the facade improvement grant, but that is not specifically for heritage, but it is, we do have situations where, for example, the train station used a combination, but typically, if it's outside of really the downtown or within the CIP designated area, then it would just be a heritage grant.
Did you want to add to that, Antonetta?
I do. Thank you, Chair Bothwell. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but for these grants, which are matching grants with the region, the regional grant system is under review, and these are some of the ones that are being considered for removal in terms of matching grants. So, we'll have, depending on what the region decides, we'll have to see how to run our own grant program. So I just want to put that on the radar that these grants are in place now, but may not be in the near future, depending on what regional council votes on in terms of the future of their grant program.
I thought I just watched the regional council August 26th meeting or whatever, where they discussed these. And I thought there was some motion to, and maybe the mayor might know, or I thought there was a motion to keep it as is to 2024 and then to review it. Did you hear that, Antonetta?
I had heard till 2022, but I didn't watch the latest one in August. So Mayor Jordan, if you know, I'd be happy to know that this is continuing for a few more years too.
I think it was because that the whole discussion ended up taking place over two separate meetings. I do think it was pushed to 2024. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it was.
I'll leave it with you, Antonetta, just to check, but I know what you're saying. It's at risk, right, Mayor Jordan? I mean, we have to.
Yes, it's definitely at risk. There is certain factions. It's a very close, like council split over it. So because there's a number of different aspects in this whole granting process and everything, and streamlining it. It was a very complicated meeting, let's just say, and so it is very divided on council as where it's going.
Thank you. Can Bianca, I don't know if you can speak to it. This came up when we were going over the budget discussions as to how much is in our budget currently available. We had some carryover of SNP funding, I believe, from 2019 or 2020 into this year's budget. Can you just comment on what exactly we have sitting in our budget available for SNP funding? Because I know it's matched, and I think isn't the amount that we have, it's usually like 15,000, is it? Per grant, but can you comment on what our budget currently sits at and how many other applications you may have received for heritage improvements that we should be considering as well, in addition to this one?
Thank you, Councilor Bothwell, for the question. I know for sure we have 15 every year for the grant. I just have to double check with the updated budget what was brought over, because I know we had the train station go through as well last year, so I'd have to double check with that. And then just remind me the second part of the question.
Yeah, you're asking me the old one to remind
I remember
you?
now. sorry, I remember now. So we do have people who are very much interested in the grant, and what I've been doing is, because we were not 100% sure if the grant was moving forward. Now, if we know that it is, we can start approaching the next person. We did start a waiting list of people who are asking for funding, and so we have a list started, but we can always look and see if we'd like to do some kind of like a last call kind of thing, give everyone a fair chance, like do a promotion for it. I'm happy to do that as well. I kind of tried to tie up loose ends just in case that was the case, that we did lose the grant program. So happy to talk about like a fresh start for it as well, and promoting to all heritage homeowners, including the ones on the waiting list.
Maybe we can bring this back to the next meeting as well, where you can give us an update on what was carried over, and I can go back to my notes too about what our budget free balance is, and then maybe your draft list of which properties you have as and what types of works they're looking for. I think it'd be nice to have an update as to what kinds of requests you've had come in, so that the committee can look at them as a whole. So I'll leave that with you, just to see if there's a way to get further information on that brought back to the committee as well. And I just have one other question on this particular property. Previously, the lots had been separated. There had been markers put on there and had been bought by a developer. And then that kind of went by the wayside. I understand that there's a meeting coming up, I think on October the 12th for this property. Are we looking at providing this grant to a developer? I just want to know whether or not with that development coming forward for actually supporting the development.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. So yes, we did receive an application that's coming to the next heritage meeting for that property. But my understanding is it's coming out of pocket from the new homeowners, and they have an agreement with the developer that they have already purchased the heritage home. That's their property, and they're the ones that are putting the funding into it, and they're private residents. They genuinely love the building, and they're just putting so much. I can't even tell you how amazing. And I know Amy, who's the homeowner, she wants to have all of you come and see it. And she's restored ceiling rosettes, and it's just amazing all the work they've been doing. And she's funding it all. So
thank you for that clarification. Yeah. Anne, did you have a question?
Sorry, my screen has gone all wonky. That was my concern, and I wanted just to be clear that this was under a new ownership, because it wasn't that long ago, like it feels like years, but it's probably only like 18 months ago at the beginning of the pandemic that there was the massacre of those butternut trees and damage to the property because of neglect and possibly, well, I don't know, I'm not even speculating, but I know that there was, doors left open and there was all sorts of things that neighbors were complaining. We had to send staff in there. So I just wanted to be sure that, there are limited funds here, that we're distributing our limited funds in the right spot.
Thanks, and appreciate that, Anne. And just to add to that, Bianca, the report suggested that some vegetation needs to be removed around where the works are going to be undertaken. Because of the butternut trees and stuff, and the potential development. Can we be reassured that we won't see any more loss of those trees? Because I think there are a few more on the property still that are existing. And I guess it'll come up with the development, but property standards, we have in the property standards bylaw specific language for heritage properties now that was put in recently. Do you have any concerns? Do we have to worry about, it sounds like the homeowner is great and is moving forward with doing the necessary repairs. But we always have that tool, right? If for whatever reason it's a designated property that we have to enforce property standards through the bylaw, is that right?
Yeah, so through you, Councillor Bothwell, yes, we do have property standards, and that's actually one of the things that triggered us going on the site initially when we had thought the basement windows were being left open. So we do have access to get on the site if we need to. The vegetation that Andrew was referencing is the vines on the masonry. So typically when we have vines on the masonry, they're all the different points that it meets the brick. That's an entrance of moisture. So every little tiny spot is bringing in damage to the masonry. So in best practice, they have to mention the removal of vegetation. I do know it is the preference of the homeowner to keep as much as possible. And I also know that Amy, who's the homeowner, personally requested that one of the trees that was supposed to come down, not to come down when she realized what was happening. So I know she's very keen on keeping the trees. And we have the arborist report, and we've identified the larger trees as being significant to the main dwelling. So, and we will also have a staff report coming with some recommendations. And again, we'll be asking for the conservation management plan and already planning to put monitors on the corners of the buildings. I know there's one crack on the corner of the building. I'm already going to request some glass and epoxy be put up there so we can monitor the crack. So we have eyes on the building, and fantastic new homeowners. She won't even touch a baseboard without reaching out to us. So it's really a good situation for that building.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from committee members? Pamela?
More of just a comment. I commend this homeowner because I know years ago when I purchased my house, it came out with a really clean, I had someone come in to review the house and check everything out, and it came with a very clean report. And I probably spent just as much as I paid for the house within the first 2 years in repairs that needed to be done anyways. So for a homeowner to buy a home like that and invest in the restoration of it, I think is really commendable. And I also wanted to say, from the property standards for heritage homes, I know I looked into having the fence repointed, and I started in the spring, and the gentleman doing the work will get to me in November. So there's also a huge time frame, because so many of these contractors that are specialized, like Two Rivers, and that are very backlogged, I guess, with the amount of work they've had this year as well. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate what this homeowner is doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. And Bianca, I think the homeowners received some support from the local historical society or members that are in the community that are very, Alan Smith, I think, has been doing quite a bit of work helping the homeowner as well. So I think there's some great contacts that she's made to help make those reduce a little bit of that kind of a financial impact by having some great community support helping as well. Can you, all good? You guys have been awesome too on site all the time as well. I know you're very passionate about it, both of you. And I think it's great to see Nixon Hall being respected in that way and with all the community support behind it. Thank you. So we have a motion. If there's any other questions, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody before I move to the motion. I know, Kate, that pencil's just by your teeth, but it's not a hand saying you want to speak. Okay. So
actually, it was pondering. I just want to make some clarification, just because of all our canceled meetings since early of 2020, when when we were dealing with the issues with Nixon Hall. It's just been a little confusing to me, and a few things were said here, and I just want a little bit of clarification. So the owner of this property that is asking us to support the $30,000 grant, is the property that I know that it was part of the property that Nixon Hall sat on, but was the property severed, and the builder who took those butternut trees down took them off like a severed parcel of land, or was it the same parcel of land that this house lives on that this gal owns still? Like, is it severed? Is it separate? Or was this builder someone working for her? Or was it like a severed property that they're going to be developing that has no longer to do with this gal requesting $30,000? Am I clear? Through you, Councillor Bothwell, to Bianca.
Thank you, Kate, for your question. Through you, Councillor Bothwell. So the situation is the applicant, not of the grant, but of the bigger application, he has submitted severance and a plan of subdivision for the site. And I'll be bringing that next week with more detail. But the situation is he purchased the lot and did the removal of the trees. She was brought in after that point because she herself was pretty upset to find out about the trees being removed. And then he was trying to take one down near the house, and she actively stopped it. So I know she does not want any of the trees touched. And, as she said, she wished she had come sooner to see when the trees were there and take action then, but she was added after the fact. And so I don't know, like the legalities behind it, but my understanding is she has an agreement for the front of the house, and the front parcel, and she has purchased additional property to ensure there's an ample setback between the heritage house and this new development. And so she is the applicant applying for the grant, and there's an actual spot where the person who actually applies is her. And then because legally they still own the property, they have to sign authorization, but the grant would be going to her.
Anne, did you want to speak?
Through you, Councillor Bothwell. I'm concerned about the oversight on this. It seems a little shaky maybe between the relationship between the developer that kind of went in and caused these issues and the current homeowner, if this is the current homeowner and was not the homeowner at that point, and was also the benefit of the severing of the lots and the potential money there. So I keep going back to like this, there feels like this relation. I know that you currently have a very good relationship with the current occupant of the home, but I don't know that we have historically a great relationship with the owner of the home. Does that make sense? I'd really like to know what the oversight would be of the grant. What, more details, I think, on that relationship, right? Like
through you, Councillor Bothwell, I think it's a great question. The money has to be used on the restoration of the building, and it's addressed to the applicant. Like that's who's applying for the money. I don't know how much I can say from that standpoint, like ownership, but the money is addressed, like the grant is addressed to her. She just needs the authorization of the owner because they still own it, the land, but she owns the house. It's kind of, I don't know, Antoinette, if you could step in.
Yeah, through you, Chair Bothwell, I think I want the committee just to know that we don't issue any of the money until the work is completely done and we're completely satisfied that it's been done to best practices using the correct materials and everything like that. So I think until we have evidence, typically, and Bianca, like, I don't know how we've done it here in the past, but how I've dealt with this in past experiences, we would bring pictures forward and just show everything's been done to the satisfaction and to the guidelines that we asked for, and therefore now we issue the check. So they never get the money in advance. They're out the money initially, and then once we're satisfied with the work, then the check is issued to the applicant. So I know we're saying maybe who might get the money. From what we've been dealing with now, we have great confidence in the person. We've seen a lot of actual restoration on the house, and the fact is the home is getting restored. So I think if we see pictures that all the work was done, and that means that this very significant heritage resource is going to be in better shape for a long period of time, then I think we need to work with that. And it's a little delicate because Bianca and I aren't sure how much of this arrangement we are at luxury to disclose, because it is an arrangement between them and we don't want to disclose anything more than we should, or that might compromise any deal. So that's why we're saying that. But I think putting the ownership piece aside, the house needs work. If it gets done and it gets done to our satisfaction, I think that's a win for heritage. And only then will the town issue the public funds to give back to the homeowner for the portion that they applied for. I hope that helps.
Anne?
Yeah, that definitely clarifies some of, I guess, what I wasn't asking about. I still feel kind of funny about it, but that being said, it is what it is.
Kate?
Through you, Councillor Bothwell, to planning staff. I support this absolutely. I believe that we should be protecting this asset that is our town's. But I do, when I read this, I felt a little icky only because of the blindness I feel. Because of our missed meetings and because I really don't feel, and I know it's separate. I know the trees are separate from this meeting, what we're seeing in front of us right now. But I still don't feel, as a heritage advisory member, I still don't feel clear of what happened. But what I do also feel is there seems to be a ginormous hole in the protection of green heritage. And when I look at those, when I see that the developer had signed an agreement with the town to provide a tree preservation plan, and it didn't happen, and we didn't have any record of those butternut trees. Butternut trees are absolutely a rare, healthy butternut trees are absolutely a rare heritage resource right now, with them being an endangered species, and we have so many of them. And I feel like I feel uncomfortable about this, even though I support this, the $30,000. I just feel that I think that this whole process with this build would really let our green heritage down. And I feel that the whole is with us. I don't know if we have systems in place to record these things. I remember reading that the trees weren't part of the protection, but I've also been sitting in meetings where we talk about designation of properties and that everything on the property is protected. So I feel like I'm not clear. I feel like there's a missed message, and I feel that there's just not clear procedure or something, but I do support protecting this residence and to do the pointing, but I do wish that we could get more clarity and maybe clean this aspect of protecting our green heritage up too, because I think it's just as valuable.
Thanks, Kate. So Antonetta, I think we've got two separate issues here: is the trees and the clear cutting by the developer, even with the town having an agreement in place, and that there's that's still an ongoing issue. But tonight's agenda is looking specifically at the heritage grant for the improvements on the property. So I hear you, Kate, and I think that might come up more in the discussion with the development application as it comes forward. As well, Antonetta, I think you're taking back these concerns because it's been spoken a number of times at these meetings that should never have happened, that we had a gap with the MNRF in not being able to respond quickly enough. And there an email they responded that they were made aware and they weren't able to get there in time. And that there was an issue as well with them having qualified staff to be able to come and do an actual that were qualified in assessing butternuts at the time. This all happened quite quickly. And the evidence was destroyed and gone by the time they got there. So I think what we're hearing is we have a couple things to do. This is the facade, this is the heritage grant tonight, but as heritage members, we need to look at how we can look at ensuring something like that never happens again to a heritage property. So I just don't know, Antonetta, what you're feeling on that.
Through you, Chair Bothwell, I mean, it's always disappointing when things like that happen. We reached out what we could for those resources. Even I'll say, like, it's sad to share, but I've seen where designated heritage resources and the actual physical house have been taken down or destroyed overnight, whether to fire, whether through demolition, intentional. And, we fought it to the end. And only in one case, I think we got $30,000, which was just laughable, even though the act permits $1 million. So sometimes people, take those risks and roll the dice. And sadly, that part is out of our control. So what we have to work on is really creating strong relationships with people, I think, like this new homeowner or the steward of this home who's really showing to want to care. And we have to separate those issues. I'd also like to talk about, the trees come up a lot. How do we partner with the Green Committee and some of their initiatives? I'd like to know maybe what's happening there. What is the mandate of heritage when it comes to that? But for tonight, I think let's stay focused on the grant. I mean, you vote how you want as a committee, but I think everything that we've seen is so encouraging based on this new homeowner and the kind of work that she's doing, the people that she's bringing in to do the work. It's absolutely a labor of love. And I want to, help advance that as much as we can. In terms of the trees, as Councillor Bothwell said, they really are two separate issues for tonight. And we did everything we could. That said, sometimes it's very challenging to stop situations like that. And by the time it happens, it's late. And, you might get a couple $1,000s of a fine, but that never makes up for a resource, whether it be a tree or a house. And that is one of the, I think, I don't want to say the pitfalls, but one of the areas in the profession, in the field, that is known to be a challenge.
Thank you.
That might not be what, it's not always what you want to hear, but that's the sort of what we've experienced. It's not easy.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Pamela, did you want one last comment?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I just wanted to comment about the region looking at pulling back contribution to the grants and that. the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism is looking for communities to protect heritage. And as part of the Niagara region, I'd like to know, at what point do we get some support in terms of governments aligning for protecting heritage? And there's significant properties along Main Street East, Main Street West, in through Beamsville and other communities that are on regional roads. And so I think there's something we need to circle back at as a committee, and maybe reach out to other heritage committees in terms of getting some better protection for these grants.
Bianca?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I know that the Lincoln was discussing some grants, so I've reached out to them to see what they're using, but I know a couple places have been looking into having additional funding. I know Niagara-on-the-Lake was looking into like a tax incentive, but happy to look at other municipalities and add that to our work plan.
One of my other properties, you know, and it is a difference in a country sometimes in what they support in that. And the one thing was my taxes were grandfathered. So the taxes were significantly lower. And, you know, something like that as well helps. And I just think we need to look at protecting these grants and reaching out maybe to other communities that are going to be impacted the same way and supporting each other. So.
Thanks, Pamela. I think, and Bianca, I think that we're going to be doing a strategic priority exercise and looking at that will more than likely be one of the items on our agenda. And Tanetta, I know you're going to speak to it, but I know we're in the next month or two, we're going to be doing that focus with staff to look at what our resources are, where we want to focus our priorities. And I'm sure that will come up at that time. And Tanetta, do you want to comment on that?
Sure, through you, Councillor Buffalo, I'd echo a similar sentiment. Let's capture that. I have done some benchmarking in the past in terms of what is the most effective way to help heritage property owners. But Pamela, I think you raise a great point about that regional and municipal alignment. What we heard from the region when they were thinking about taking away these grants was that heritage is not a function of the region. It is a function of the lower tier. And, you know, we pushed hard to say, yes, but it's what makes Niagara unique and all the other sorts of things that we could put forward. So we completed a survey advocating for the heritage grants. That said, the region says that they, you know, and again, I'm not privy to this conversation that happened at council these last two meetings, but, you know, they're like, well, we now have our own priorities that we need to focus on. And I believe it was like employment, housing. And so they want to target their money more specifically to those things. And they looked at things like heritage, facade improvement grants. And they said, no, this really isn't the responsibility of the region. And therefore, maybe we should roll back some of those programs. So they're looking at it from that tier level, and they don't really play a role in the municipal heritage conservation area. And that's how they were justifying contemplating removing the heritage grant.
Thank you. Pamela, does that give you some background?
It does. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to move to the motion. The motion on the floor is, I'm going to read it. Resolve that report HR 2135 regarding the recommendation that the town of Grimsby enter into a heritage grant agreement with 262 Main Street West be received, and that the designated heritage property grant application for 262 Main Street West for $30,000 combined regional and municipal contribution for the masonry restoration be endorsed, subject to the following condition. A, the owner applicant provide final restoration details for review and approval by town planning staff prior to conducting restoration work, and that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee recommend that staff prepare the associated bylaw authorizing the execution of a heritage improvement and restoration grant agreement be forwarded to council for approval, and that the grant agreement be signed by the applicant, the mayor, and the town clerk. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Mark and Mayor Jordan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everybody. Good conversation. Next item on the agenda is under 7. We did 7B, so we're moving over to 7C, the committee consultation memo regarding street names.
Yes, so through you, the chair, Heritage staff were presented with a request for a list of street names for upcoming developments in 2019. We have since contacted Mr. Wayne Mullins from the Grimsby Historical Society for a list of potential street names that would be supported. Attached as Appendix A to this memo was the review of potential street names and explanations for their inclusion. Mr. Mullins performed an entire review of the previous draft document of potential street names for the property at 314 Main Street East, as well as the property at 709 to 721 Winston Road, which was included in the draft document. The names that are supported by the Grimsby Historical Society are as follows: 314 Main Street East, the names Moore and Frost; 709 to 721 Winston Road, the name Friel. And I leave it open to the committee for any questions or comments that they may have on this memo.
Thanks, Andrew. Comments, questions on the memo? Anne?
I understand that we asked the Historical Society to vet whatever names are come up with a list for us, because we've had in the past, and it falls under the Grimsby Heritage Advisory. I guess my concern is these seem to be last names. And I know that sometimes you find things about people that you don't, and I don't know if that was what Mr. Mullins vetted to ensure that there was nothing that would come up that would be inappropriate or might cause some angst, especially with a last name. When it's only a last name you're dealing with, it could be some random member of the family that's perhaps has a history that's unacceptable currently. So I know that there are so many questions about things today from the past, and that I think naming streets after people or families is potentially problematic. And that would be my reservation. Not that, Moore and Frost particularly are very common names. So there's certainly that opens up good things and bad things. So they're so generic that maybe that's not an issue, right?
Yes.
So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents as somebody who studies history and hears all these things frequently about the renaming of schools and the renaming of streets and buildings and whatnot, statues. So these are just things that we should consider, particularly when we name a street today after a family.
No, I definitely appreciate your feedback, and I'd be happy to respond to Mr. Mullins with the concerns of the committee in regards to making sure that the street names that we are choosing have been thoroughly vetted, so that hopefully we don't run into those issues later on that we're experiencing today throughout the country.
Antonetta?
Yes. Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I think, and you make an excellent point. Maybe even when we vet them, everything's okay, but in 10, 50, 20 years, things may not be okay. So I wonder if we can ask the archives to look at names that are not related to people, and how about maybe naming some after our Indigenous community and our Indigenous heritage as part of sort of, our component of what we can do for truth and reconciliation. So maybe we can go back with those suggestions, Andrew, and do something really meaningful, something that resonates and is of our time and in a way timeless. It won't be like, well, we found out many years later that individual did something and now we want to change the name. So I think maybe I really appreciate that comment, Ann, and it just made me think that we can do better here. So let's do better.
So we have a motion. I'm just going to let you know what it says, and then I'll bring a recommendation that you guys can consider. That the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee receive the memorandum required for street names, and the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee recommend that the names submitted by the Grimsby Historical Society be sent to the region for review and approval for future applicant owner development needs. My suggestion, based on the comments that we're receiving, is that the motion might read better, that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee recommend that the names submitted by the Grimsby Historical Society be sent back to the GHS for further review based on committee comments. Does that capture that, Anne?
Yes, to a certain point, but I really, really appreciate what Antoinetta suggested about using Indigenous names. I think that would be wonderful, and it is a huge part of Truth and Reconciliation. So I would fully support us going in that direction as well.
So
I don't know if that's part of the motion or not.
Yeah, would that capture it if I just say based on committee comments, Antonetta, or should I speak specifically and consider Indigenous?
Or you're with an emphasis on Indigenous heritage, perhaps, yeah. Just so that it's a bit more explicit. Certainly we can give them the comments, but just seems a little broad for
a
motion.
So then how about, and be sent back to GHS for further review based on committee comments with an emphasis on consideration.
An emphasis maybe for names that honor Indigenous heritage in the community.
I'm sure the clerk is going to get that motion perfectly written when he reads back the transcript of this meeting. And does that answer the direction you're?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Councilor Bothwell.
Are there any other comments for any other members of the committee? Kate, is that pencil in the air for a hand?
I was just wondering through you, Councilor Bothwell, to planning. In my mind, I faintly recall a job that was posted for Grimsby that had to do with Indigenous sensitivities. And I'm wondering, would we be getting advice if we were going to be putting these streets forward, or would we be like from somebody that might have this kind of background, opposed to us suggesting through Heritage Committee or through the Historical Society? Like, would we be getting some advice from someone of the Indigenous culture?
Antonetta?
Through you, Councillor Bothwell, what I could suggest is that we are working on our land acknowledgement statement, and we did consultation with groups that way. Maybe we can look to those groups to help us ensure that we get the names correct. Yeah. And that it's something that's meaningful and pertinent to this area. In terms of the job posting, I'm not aware of one, but I may be out of the loop on that. But certainly I always agree, if we're going to do anything, let's go to the actual groups who can provide us, or at least vet, what the names that we might be considering from an Indigenous heritage perspective.
I think the one that Kate's referring to, it might have been a position with the art gallery. I remember seeing it as well. And it was, I don't know if it was a volunteer position, or a part-time position. I think it was supporting the art gallery, or yeah, one of those. I saw it as well. So I'm just wondering if we capture this in the motion. I think even if the street names come back from the GHS after they've taken those considerations from their research, then we can still use our contacts within the Indigenous community to then have those vetted again further as a second step. Is that an option, or how do you see that?
Can we say GHS or pertinent groups? Like, 'cause the GHS, maybe that's a lovely idea, but that's not our area of expertise. We'd actually recommend you speak out to this group. So maybe that gives us some flexibility.
Okay, I'm going to say pertinent cultural associations. Does that make sense, Antonetta? Yeah. So refer it back to the GHS and pertinent cultural associations based on committee comments with an emphasis for names that honor Indigenous heritage in the community. Are we close? Anne, we're good? We're good. Kate?
I think we're close. The only thing is, like you said, to maybe get away from last names, and I'm not sure that's capturing that. So it's like the Indigenous piece and maybe names that are relevant for the community that are not last names of people and families. If the committee is comfortable, we can work with Peter to make sure that's appropriate to reflect what the discussion was.
So that's why I'm saying based on committee comments. So I'm taking that as being Anne's discourse on the last name issue and the sensitivities that are occurring within the public forum right now on that. So I think that kind of captures the general gist of it. If I can get more specific in this and say no last names, but like, I think there may be instances where we may find that a last name is appropriate. So
Agreed. Yep, we can leave it that way.
So does anybody want it refined further? Let me know. Kate, is that hand up? Or is it just, oh, you're supporting your elbow? Okay. All right, we're all good. So I think, Peter, did you capture that motion pretty good, you think? Okay. So the motion's been captured by Peter as we've discussed it. I can read it again, but basically it's at the first part that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee received the memorandum. Can you read it, Peter? How about you read it?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I have to try to read some of my notes here, so bear with me. So the resolution is as follows: resolved that committee direct staff to request the GHGS and pertinent cultural associations to review for additional street names based on committee comments with an emphasis on the Indigenous community.
On names that honor
the Indigenous community.
Want to try that again, Peter? He's refining it as we're speaking. So the first part was that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee received the memorandum request for street names, and the next part Peter will read.
That the committee direct staff to request the GHGS or pertinent cultural associations for further review on additional street names, which, based on committee comments, place an emphasis on honoring the Indigenous heritage in the community.
With an emphasis on names that honor.
Yes.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? And Sarah, thank you. All in favor? Bunch of hands carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you very much for everyone's input. And the next item is the status and activity report.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. So just for the new members, this is our status and activity report. So we'd like to put all the items discussed at the meeting on here, and this just helps us to keep our agenda lighter than having a verbal update for everything. So typically what we'll do is if there's been a change, we'll highlight it in yellow. So this will be on every agenda. And so typically we would just indicate it in yellow and then ask if the committee had any questions about the status sheet. Since it's your first meeting, I thought I would just quickly go through each of them. So our designations for the 3 properties on the screen, we received an appeal for all 3 of them after we served our notice of intention to designate. Currently, all appeals are with the Ontario Land Tribunal. So we have here a property we were looking at 122 Main Street East. This property here has been put on hold. We still need to have consultation with the homeowner. Now that our front counter is open, this is something we can look into again, but for now there's no update. 130, the Danish Lutheran Church, that was designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. We did not receive an appeal. 104 Main Street East, we did receive an appeal and it is currently with the Ontario Land Tribunal. 224 Main Street East had its designation bylaw updated to reflect key attributes, which included the ice house and architectural features, and that did not receive an appeal. The designation plaques, as you saw earlier, have all been finalized, and Andrew, scroll down a little more. That's another plaque there that's been finalized. These are our Grimsby Remembers plaque program. So 2 of the plaques that were completed have been installed. And then there's 5 other ones that were in a draft form. And that's something we're going to be looking at our next meeting, October/November, where we'll be having our priorities discussion, most likely in October. So we'll be talking about where those fall on that list. The Grimsby Beach study is, we've just received all the documents from our consultant, and it's currently with our technical review committee. We've just received comments, and the consultants are preparing the new drafts with all of the technical comments to be sent to the stakeholders committee. And we have a meeting in about 2 weeks with them where we'll go over some of their comments. And then we have tentatively booked the open house. It's going to be like an open house before the public meeting. So we'll have that event coming in early November. And then we've forecasted that to council. So that all those updates will be coming in the form of an e-blast to all of our, all the people who have subscribed to be informed of the study. It'll be updated on our Let's Talk Grimsby. And then we'll also be providing an update to council and providing a planning, an update in our planning touch point. So those are just some updates on that one there. The Heritage Conservation District study, Andrew talked more in detail. The Heritage tool, that was something I had referenced earlier with Mayor Jordan. So that's the Heritage Designation Plaque, reports that are being added to the website. They're currently all undergoing AODA compliance, and it's quite an undertaking, so it's taking some time, but that is our goal to get that on the website, and those are underway. The Heritage Register, so for our new members, we have this year alone added 140 new properties to the register, which was a big undertaking for both the committee and staff, and we've worked with homeowners to get support for all of them, only receiving, I believe, two removals, one formally and one just an inquiry. So that one well received, but we do continue to ask that the committee provide us with addresses, because we do want to continue to be proactive rather than reactive with our heritage protection. So even if the committee members all bring 5, we can take those into consideration. 78 Livingston, Andrew has resumed research on this property. This was something we had started pre-COVID. The archives are now open. And so Andrew is working on some research for that property. 242 is completed. We received the photos and they have constructed the compatible porch. These here are some removal requests. So this was a form that was released, which is now required under the Heritage Act. So we proactively have one. And then these here are some removal requests we've received that were on hold until the archives have opened. So that's something we have to work into our work plan as well, reviewing if these will be moving forward with designation. And I know we have some preliminary research provided to us by the community that we're using as the information to help us through this process. And then we'll be doing our own. And then this is another property here that's requested removal. You can speak to the other ones. One was a development application that the committee provided comment on. Register and designation brochures. Those were those brochures that you were provided with prior to today's meeting. These were just some questions on the designation of the gates. They are in fact designated. This was just an update here for 133 and the maintenance of the site, which we continue to monitor. And then this was a request here about the designation, our designated sites compared to what the trust had. I'll just keep moving down, maybe focus on the yellow ones. The plaque designs are completed. Bell Park, sorry, Angie, if you could just scroll down, but I can remember. I think this was the Bell Park fountain. So we have reached out to the Parks Department kind of have a collaborative restoration efforts down on the fountain. So they're going to look and see what work needs to be done. And me and Andrew have offered full assessment of the fountain. So that's something we're going to arrange with them to make sure that we can evaluate the condition. We did want to note that typically with those structures, they have a rebar in them that wouldn't have been stainless steel. So typically that rebar reacts differently to water, and that's just typical for that age and that early concrete. So we can do everything we can to remove the moisture, because obviously more moisture is going to continue to have a damaging effect on the rebar. And so that's something we can continue to work on, but unfortunately in this case, we might not be able to stop some of that decay. So we'll just do everything we can to put it in a condition that can be kind of maintained.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Because I saw the information that you put here, that you will have the parks go down, assess it. You guys will come, you'll advise of the material that you guys will use to mend it, all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
It's done. It's been done.
No, I know they have come and taken a look, but we're looking at a more of a long-term plan for the fountain, because as I said, there is a rebar in it. And typically
it's all been cemented.
Yes, but with that type of situation, it's a surface repair. So that's the internal damage is what is causing the external. So there's something more happening inside, and that's typically caused by the rebar not being stainless steel. So it's unfortunately that is what happens with the use of earlier materials and not knowing how they'll turn out long term. So we want to come up with a conservation plan for the fountain, something long term. And we had parks do a temporary fix that's not going to make anything worse. But we do have plans for a long term strategy for the fountain. So I just wanted to let you know that. So I'll move on to Bill 108. We've adjusted all of our internal documents to reflect the Bill 108 changes, and myself, Antonetta, and Andrew have attended multiple roundtable discussions, seminars, and we're feeling quite confident with the new act, and we're helping relay all of that new information to homeowners as we get inquiries and get us prepared for all future applications. Andrew is working with the butternut tree to see if we can get a sample done at the Sault Ste. Marie location, and that's through the ministry. I know Councillor Bothwell was going to get us some additional contacts, but we are working with the Grimsby Beach professionals that are doing the study. So we are continuing on that, and we'll update you as we get more information. Is there any more, Andrew, or is that good?
No, just that I was referred to the Sault Ste. Marie through one of our contacts that was working on the Grimsby Beach project. And he had said that getting the sample of the tree to Sault Ste. Marie would be quicker than having the butternut assessor come out and do it, just because he informed me that you didn't need a certified butternut assessor to take the sample and give it to the lab so that they could test it. And he seemed to think that was the best route in this case for us to get the answer we needed to see if it was protected under the Endangered Species Act. And then that would let us know if we needed to take more steps to protect the tree.
I just wonder if Kate has, Kate, you made some babies. Didn't you go and put some babies on that tree?
Yes, we've been experimenting this year with the tree, and we unfortunately we 5 separate branches with the permission of the homeowner. We pulled away some of the bark and put some stimulant and followed the instructions, but unfortunately butternuts are pretty difficult they're temperamental, and none of them, we did create root balls, but none of the 5 took. We've also been trying to, we have a number of babies that were put into the ground naturally from the falling seeds. I don't know if Jeff's here, he would know better. So we've transplanted a few. We did transplant one to the Bell Park, and we purchased one last year that didn't live, and then we transplanted one by taking a massive area around the root ball and transplanted and then fenced it. I think that contributing factors to the last year's one not living were we had lots of kids pulling on it. And so we fenced it in like with some, and we've been loving it a lot. And it seems to be taking hold. And so we do also, because fall is a great time for root development, and we do have plans of a few other ones that we've been letting grow. Plans of digging a massive amount in yards, in community yards, and transplanting to neighbors' yards who are willing to, try to make a go of the butternut. So we are experimenting with what we have there.
I was just wondering, Kate, Andrew, did you say a sample has actually been sent to Sault Ste. Marie, or you're waiting to send a sample?
No, I've contacted Sault Ste. Marie to get the exact procedure that we would need to follow in order to get it to them, what they would need from us, and then we could send it to them. I was hoping that through our connections within the community, getting the sample wouldn't be too difficult.
That's what I'm just thinking. You just need to get Kate to jump the fence. Yeah. Okay.
It would be a lot cheaper as well for the town to be able to do the sample this way, just because the quotes that we received.
So you're just waiting for them to get back to you to tell you what they need, how they want the sample collected and sent?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay. So we
I
should
just need the proper procedures.
So we should hear by next meeting then, right?
It's definitely on my agenda. I am committed to finding out if this is a true butternut tree. I wouldn't have spent this much time on it if I wasn't committed to it. I know it's taken a long time, and I apologize for that, but due to these types of things, when you're reaching to people in different parts of Ontario to get an answer, it makes it difficult when they're not right across the office, and you can't just go up to them and say, hey, what do you need? So I do apologize for the length of time that it's taken. I understand that it's a concern, but understand I am totally committed to making sure this file is seen through to the end, and we have a firm answer on what we need to do in order to protect this tree for the community.
Thank you. Antonetta?
Yes, through you, Chair Bothwell. I think once we find out the appropriate procedure for taking the DNA sample, Kate, can we work directly with you, since you have owner permission to enter onto the property, get the DNA sample, send it out to Sault Ste. Marie, and then know once and for all if we've got a rare butternut on our hand, and then we can get that going and save the town a ton of money by just going straight for the DNA test and not hiring an assessor. So if you're okay with that, it sounds like you have the owner's permission to enter the property. As soon as we find out, then can we work through you to get that done, Kate? Yeah.
We had the owner's permission to put the plastic containers over top of the branches, and we entered the property all summer long. The span of the canopy of this butternut spans over, I believe, 4 properties. So I don't know how to properly get a sample from a tree. Possibly Mayor Jeff Jordan could advise on that. But I'm sure that even if we couldn't enter that property, even though they've been cooperative, we could get it in many ways. The interesting thing that I would love to do also, if this is a true butternut, is measure that canopy, because I was reading somewhere in Ontario was the largest butternut in all of the world, but it burned. It was on a golf course, not somewhere here in Ontario, and it burned to the ground in 2010. So it'd be interesting it was 28 meters long, which I don't think this is 28 meters, but it's pretty darn big. That'd be interesting if we go farther to find out if this is, because the fella at the that we've hired for that our consulting company has hired, he feels that and I remember the name, Dorothy, that it's potentially a champion butternut, which is very rare. Very rare.
Yeah, the granddaddy or something of butternuts.
See, I couldn't remember for the longest time, and I just kept thinking grand.
I don't know. I can't. Grand something. Yeah.
Grand poobah, but it's called a champion butternut. He's pretty sure. I mean, we'll have to. We'll have to
So the road, we're on the long road, Kate, and it sounds like everybody's on board on the train. So we're moving it. It's moving along. Mayor Jordan, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just the sample size, probably if they're just doing testing for DNA type testing, it wouldn't need to be a very big sample, I wouldn't think, but I'm sure they'll send Andrew all the parameters of how much you need, but it'll be the same all over the tree. So
thank you.
So
okay, so
it shouldn't be a large sample, I wouldn't think.
Kate, did you want to say something else before we go back to the rest of the status report?
Yeah, just real quick, just because I want to give a little background, just a quick background. The only reason this tree came up was that it is on a property that was just recently purchased, and it's a massive tree that it looks like it is in a property on somebody's property, but I believe through encroachment the property line has changed, and that it might be a shared tree that the town on a boundary tree. But the tree has, because most likely it's been swallowed into a yard, it's been a lot of years without trimmed branches, a lot of years without, and the branches are balancing, pushing electrical wires down and spreading over multiple yards. And many of the branches are not living. And the tree looks like it is in distress, but it potentially is a close to 300-year-old butternut tree. And this is an endangered species, and the ministry is hoping that if we can figure out where healthy ones are that don't seem to have this fungus, we can figure out why they're healthy, and potentially save them from vanishing. And this is just one butternut tree that we have in Grimsby, and we have other ones in Grimsby Beach also. But this one is in a bit of a dire situation because the house that it sits on, it just was questionable about its future, and that's all. And that if it potentially could or not be torn down, that maybe the root system might have been endangered. That's all. That's why we moved on this, just to try to figure out if we could protect the tree in any way. So
thanks for the background, Kate. Much appreciated for the new members. So Bianca, thank you for the status report and going over that with all of us. I'm just going to open it up to any other questions on the status report from members. Okay, I have a couple, Bianca. If you could clarify, please, the appeals that you've noted on 141 Main, 147 Main, 8 to 10 Ontario, and 104 Main, you noted that they're with the OLT. They're actually with the Conservation Review Board, right? Because they were during the transitional provisions. Because I noticed online that they have a CRB number for the appeal process. So are they going to be heard under the old rules, under the CRB rules? Just if you could confirm that.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bothwell. So yes, it's all under OLT now, but they are still considered CRB hearings. And with that being a formal recommendation will come forward, and then it will be up to council to move forward. It will be the original way and not the new way.
So I'm sorry, you said a form because there was just a case management conference on the 141 and 147 Main where they discussed the procedural order and the issues list with respect to those two properties and the designation and the demolition permits. So did you say there's going to be something coming to us about that or to the council?
Through you, Councillor Bothwell, I know it is with our legal team, so I am not sure how much I am able to say.
Okay, yeah,
I'm not sure.
That's fine. I think you just, I think we're gonna hear more about it. Like council will be making a decision on how to proceed, is what you're saying, at whether it's combined because I think questions came up at the case management about whether the CRB cases would be heard separately or whether they would be combined with the planning matters that are also under appeal. So, but that'll be something council will decide, right?
Yeah, happy to get more information on those. If it's according to the original way, which I've been told by the ministry it is, and they have relayed that to everyone who has current applications, then for the designations, a decision will be made, and it'll come in the form of a recommendation report. But ultimately, it's up to council to decide to move forward with the designation or not. Where the new way will be LPAT's, or not LPAT, sorry, the OLT's decision is legal and binding. So that's the difference. So it's still up to council to decide if they want to designate or not. And then moving forward, all ones we do in the future, it will be up to the OLT to decide if they'll be designated or not. And then to speak to the permit, the demolition permits, that is a OLT decision.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that clarification. And then 224 Main Street East, the Ice House, you put property has been designated, but in the additional notes, committee requested an update on October 15, 2019, just to confirm that designation went through, right? That's all finalized.
Correct. It's a designation amendment. So the bylaw has been amended to now have attributes and the Ice House is listed. Yep.
Perfect. And then the Carnegie Library Grimsby Remembers plaque. I know it's the drafts are being updated with committee's revisions. It's for future plaque installation. And this might come up on our strategic priorities. It might be something if we can talk about it at that, because it's the library's 150th year celebration. And I think it'd be really exciting if that Grimsby Remembers plaque could possibly be part of the library's 150th celebration this year. But it may not be possible. I just tied those two together because of the Carnegie Library and that library celebration. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Councillor Bothwell, is it this year is the anniversary or upcoming year?
It's this year, I believe, because they're doing
This
the
year,
150.
okay.
If the library has posted the 150 things, whatever,
Okay.
up to date. So
Okay.
yeah,
We can add it to the priority list. I just know with the other ones, there was quite a bit of wait for even if we got the sign produced for locates and things like that. But it's definitely something we can
just to
add
think
to the
about.
priorities for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more. I think that was the 78 Livingston. I appreciate that the preliminary research is being conducted. As you know, both properties are currently for sale. So I don't know if that puts some, I think the one next to it as well, which is a 1-story. I don't know if that puts any pressures, because one of our things was looking at whether there's that development pressure to protect, but I know we have them on the register it's on the register. So we have the 60 days anyway, if there's a demolition permit, right?
Thank you for the question. So the 78 Livingston, which is the corner property, is the one that's on the register. And absolutely, it's made us want to be proactive with our research, because again, if they do, they will have to put in a notice of intention to demolish, which will require extensive research on their end. But we do like to do our due diligence, and then it will be similar to 30530 if they move down that route. But 80 is not on the register, so I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know the age. I know they have both had a metal roof put on, but I don't know the age of the other one. And it may be a little reactive, and that could hurt us if we did pursue designation down the road. So that one in that case, but 78, we proactively added that to the list, and the intent of the list is to give us that opportunity. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Pamela?
Thank you. I have a 3-part question. First, when you say you're going to pursue designation and notify the owner, why is the owner left to the end instead of involving them from the beginning? Secondly, I'd like to know how many of these designations are challenged. And third, what is the cost to the town with homeowners challenging these?
Bianca, do you want to answer that?
sure. Thank you for your question, Pam. Through you, the chair. I can answer the first question. So with the Bill 108 changes, it's something we definitely need to look at because owner concurrence is going to be very helpful in this process. With the new Bill 108 changes, there's 2 opportunities for objection where originally there was only the one. So owner concurrence is definitely recommended by the ministry. And that's something we're leaning towards. In a case where a building is an immediate threat, then it's up to the discretion of the municipality to take action if that resource is valuable to the community and we feel that it deserves retention. But we are, as a committee, working towards being correcting some of those relationships in the community. And I think part of that was we had talked about having the committee be a part of kind of giving the homeowner an opportunity to be a part of the process. But I think there's that line between when it's like, we don't want a hostile designation. We would like owner concurrence. And then we have the situations where the municipality needs to act. And that's a case by case. And then of the recent 6 designations we moved forward, we received 4 appeals. As for the cost, I can't answer that right now. I don't know if Antonetta would like to weigh in on that, or if
Through you, Chair Bothwell, I think the cost can depend. Sometimes when an owner appeals, we're able to mediate the situation, tell them a bit more about designation, how it doesn't impact, or it shouldn't impact certain areas of their home, and what they can and cannot do with it and future additions and things like that. And sometimes that just resolves itself. In other instances, it doesn't resolve itself. And then Bill 108, you ended up at the Conservation Review Board, and you can end up with legal expenses, staff time, of course. And then if you need any expert witnesses, then that can all add up. But there's no set cost.
Okay. I just think if we're going to say that designation is a great thing, that the key component in there is the homeowner. And, when you look at Grimsby and the preservation that has happened, it is because of these homeowners. And I do think it would be a more respective approach if the homeowner is involved from the beginning, and at least to have a really open discussion with them.
Thanks,
I
Pam.
think anyone in the community would want that.
Thanks, Pam. Bianca, just to confirm, do you find that the appeals are often by developers and it's where a heritage property or a potential heritage property has been purchased by a developer, and that's what the situation we're in right now, which there's either a potential for a development and people are appealing because they're losing that opportunity, or it's the developer that's actually behind the appeal?
I think that's a great question, Councillor Bothwell. I think it's mixed. There's, of course, those situations, and I would say those are like the moments where it's up to the discretion of the municipality to take action because we see the value in the resource and we stand by our recommendations. But I also think there are situations when there's misinformation and maybe sometimes the homeowner doesn't understand the protections and maybe don't feel validated. I would say that's the case with one of the appeals we received. They just maybe didn't feel heard. And I think those are the types of applications where you could potentially have like a mediation situation where you kind of meet them, have a middle ground, and then they're okay with it if certain things are excluded from the designation. But I do think it's mixed. Like there's another one that I'm sure everyone's familiar with. I'm just not going into details because of where they are right now legally, but there is one that is contextually very significant and it was just a burden on the homeowner. So we get that a lot, but condition is not a reason to not designate. And in that case where we did see it as the building could potentially be in threat, we do have to act on it. So I think there's a variety of reasons for the appeal. One I would say is that hostile homeowner situation where we potentially could meet halfway in a mediation where the person feels heard. And then there's the ones where it's an immediate danger. So
thank you. So any other questions on the status report? Pamela, do you have any other questions on the status report?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so I've got a motion. Resolved that the status and activity report be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Anne? Seconder, Brian. All in favor to receive it? Carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the verbal update Locust Trees Kitchen House.
I can speak to that one, Councillor Bothwell. So through the chair, we have received an inquiry about a possible designation for the locust trees on a designated site known as the Kitchen House, also known as 212 Main Street East. So essentially what had happened is the property owner was concerned about the retention of the trees and just kind of similar to what had happened with 133, just making sure that proper regular maintenance is taking place and that the resource is being maintained long-term. So after receiving this request, I did reach out to the ministry and it was strongly suggested that designation of trees be considered when it is directly related to the reason for the property being designated. In order for the trees to be considered for designation, according to best practices, we would ensure that there's a direct connection between the items listed within the Ontario Regulation 906. So the Ontario Regulation 906 is that chart that we use that shows if something can be designated or not designated. So we would want to ensure that those trees have a way of strengthening the Ontario Regulation 906 and contribute to that value, and that their retention long-term also contributes to the reason the property should be designated. However, if the committee does want to move forward with this process, we would recommend that we do a full Ontario Regulation 906 to see if the tree in fact does merit designation. And then we can of course look at this at our October meeting where it falls on the priorities. So if we want to focus on designation of trees, then that needs to be added to the list. If we want to focus more on the designation of buildings, we can add that to the list. There's just a lot of competing priorities. So we just want to make sure that whatever the committee wants to be their mandate, that it's being addressed and that we're prioritizing so we can get it done. But I also think there's a lot of good opportunities for partnership potentially with the Green Committee, and maybe they can look into some of the history as well around the trees, and then we can work together to see what a protection for that tree could look like. So that's some of my feedback. I'll leave it up to the committee to have a little bit of a discussion about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bianca. Questions from the committee? I've got a question, Bianca. If we, so we've got just a motion to receive this, and I know that there's, the homeowner has provided the background on the house and is looking to have this proceed forward some way by this committee. Can we, just so it doesn't get lost, can we add it to the status report and then ensure that it's on the list for consideration for the strategic priorities at that meeting?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Bothwell. I think we'll definitely include it. I think maybe this is like a bigger discussion, like where trees fall on our priority list. So we will definitely add it to the status sheet, and then maybe we can make a category when we can talk about it a little bit at our pre-meeting to see how we want to lay it out. But I think it would be important to have all of our different umbrellas and then where we can distribute resources to that. So, but that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I kind of see this one a bit like the ice house, where we had a designated property and then we found there was an attribute on it that we wanted to add. So I kind of look at this one as we already have a designated property and it's looking at adding an attribute. But that conversation we certainly can have when we get to the next meeting further to see whether it fits into our priorities. So does the committee, anybody else have any other comments about that? And are they good with that moving forward that way? I know it's getting late. This is like like a 3-hour meeting, and normally we have a break at 9. So I'm hoping you guys are going to be patient. We have one more item on the agenda. If we can get through it, then we won't take a break. So I have a motion here, receive that the verbal update regarding the kitchen house locust tree be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Anne, seconder. I just need another hand. Mayor, thank you. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And I have the last item under correspondence is the Sobey Road, May Annabelle Sobey spelling of the street name.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. If I could speak to that one. So through you, the chair, the town received a request for the correction of the street spelling of Sobey Road. Ms. Annabelle has again asked for further consideration for the changing of the spelling of the name. Councillor Bothwell has done some work to advance this request by confirming the number of residents impacted by the street name. And it's been confirmed by our GIS department that only 9 of them have residents on the parcels, but there are 46 properties in total with 30 different owners. And then they may not have the same changes as the residents, but there is going to be some changes because the street name would apply to their parcels as well. Yeah, if the committee chooses to recommend this item to council, we would recommend that it be sent to the appropriate departments to move it forward. After our discussion today, I feel like the Heritage Committee and Heritage staff's involvement has concluded. So if we do decide to move forward with changing the name, I would just include within the resolution that it be moved to the appropriate departments moving forward so we can process it if that's the way the committee wants to go. Just for the other members, we had previously offered to have a street name made and gift it to Ms. Annabelle, and then we would look at other commemoration options throughout the town. But she has asked us again to reconsider this, so we'll leave that with the committee to have a discussion. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you. There's Sarah, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, again, I wasn't privy to the previous conversations about this, but just given our conversation about the Grimsby Historical Society's put forward of new names for, future developments, I think this is worth looking at to change the spelling of Sobey. I think when we talk about, naming streets after families, there is a legacy involved with that. And if the street's already named after the family, but it's spelled wrong, I think we have a responsibility to honor the family correctly. I am now considering what Anne was saying about, the legacy of these family names going forward into generations. But if it's a respelling, I think it's important to honor the legacy of the family and the business that was on the land. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents there.
Thank you, Sarah. Anne Brabant, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I know that we talked about this at the last meeting, and because there is a significant cost involved to people to have all their information changed, their addresses, whatnot. What does staff think? Like, what is Antoinetta? I know we kind of all agreed that we would give the lady a plaque, and like, because obviously she feels really strongly about this. So I guess that was what I wanted to know. Like, what is your recommendation, Antoinetta?
And I'm just going to give you, like, I questioned the 46 properties because that's why I drove the street and looked up on the GIS and the assessment parcels from Niagara Navigator and whatever. And if it's actually an assessed and street named address, there were only 9. And the Canada Post alignment with the Beamsville Grimsby problem affects, I think, 5 of those properties. So they're already going to be impacted by the Canada Post realignment with being renamed from Grimsby to Beamsville, from Beamsville to Grimsby as well. So there's, and there was a petition that they submitted that they all agreed that they said,
They would do it.
we're happy with doing it. I've had some lengthy conversations with May Annabelle as well. And the property actually across the house burned down apparently at 412 30 Road, which is where they originally resided on a 100-acre parcel between Mud Street and Sobey, where the farm was originally located. They also had property on the other side of 30 Road, another large parcel there. And 417 is on it wasn't related directly to the family, but it's on the Heritage Register. We just added it as well. So this is an error that goes back a long ways. So she's, I think, 94 years old and is looking to rectify the spelling of the family name that for whatever reason, the town, whether it was Grimsby or Beamsville or whoever actually made the signs and put them up, is looking to correct that error of the spelling of the name. So just the costs that are involved, I understand that, but I think it's also, we need to look at, are we honoring the family, and is the cost also, it's going to be incurred anyway because of the Canada Post realignment for most of those.
Of course, and Councillor Bothwell, I'm not disagreeing with you that that's not valid. What about the Beamsville portion? Do we have the ability to rename that portion of the road, or would that it would be done automatically when we do it?
It's not that it's a Beamsville portion, it's all Grimsby. What happened was erroneously, Canada Post had assigned them a Beamsville postal code in Beamsville.
I thought a portion of the road was on Beamsville.
No, actually between Church Street and Fairbrother is the stretch of Sobey. Okay. And there's a few properties closer to the end of Fairbrother between 30 Road and Fairbrother that were Canada Post misappropriately labeled them as Beamsville when they are within the municipality of Grimsby. So Canada Post has to rectify the error, and they have to be moved to Grimsby with a Grimsby postal code. They have a Beamsville postal code right now. And that's happening actually in October. Apparently, I checked with the clerk, and Canada Post realignment is supposed to be happening in October. I don't know if it's been finalized, but this is a timely transaction to look at that because they're finalizing that as well. So that's just background information.
Yeah, could we sync it up to the change with Canada Post and just make it easy and once and?
So I don't know whether, Antoinette, I don't know whether we can sync it with Canada Post. They're going to do what they want to do when they want, but the homeowner will have the ability to, if council chooses to move forward with this and correct it, they're I guess that's up to the timing. Canada Post often is very slow anyway in telling people something's happening. Antoinette, I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, through you, Councillor Bothwell. I think this is a tough one, and to be very honest, I think this is past the mandate of a heritage committee, and we need to defer this, whether it goes back to the clerk's office who's dealing with the postal code changes or the appropriate staff. I just think as a committee, we tried to offer, and I still maybe don't want to abandon some of those commemorative pieces if we don't have to, but I think we're out of our area of expertise and recommendation here, our role to council. So we as staff are recommending that we direct this to the appropriate departments to deal with. And like you said, there is the cost. I know they've signed that petition, but I wonder if they realize some of the financial consequences, or are they assuming that maybe the town is covering those costs, and then that would be up to council to decide. So I think with all of that, it's really out of the realm of a heritage committee, and we should defer it to or refer it to the appropriate departments, whatever the correct terminology is.
Thank you, Antonetta. Mayor Jordan?
Just to throw my 2 cents in on a item that was certainly near and dear to myself, and it's the Avonlea, when it was incorrectly named the Olivia Hare House. Rebecca and myself have fought that to get history right. We fought it ever since the plaque went up, and so it was a battle that took 6 or 7 years, but it's something that history should be corrected when it can be. And I think that this is something that we really need to do. And I understand that it's not the Heritage's position to move it further, but I think as a town that values its history, I just really think it's our imperative to to right the wrong and get it correct. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Pamela?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Have we looked into, so driver's license are easy enough, but what about passports, Nexus cards? And when you get into more complicated pieces of IDs for people, and who absorbs those costs?
So I think they're going to get the Canada Post costs anyway, and I don't think Canada Post pays for them. Antonetta?
Yeah, through you, Chair Bothwell, those are the same questions that we wrestled with, Pamela. Passports, if they own a business, they have business cards, they have marketing materials, they have web platforms. We just don't know. And I believe we did find that there were a couple businesses there. So that's why we've been saying it's not that easy. We wish we could just make the change because we believe it's important to honor the correct name and spelling, but it's not that easy, and there can be significant financial impacts, and that's why we're suggesting it's a conversation outside of the scope of the Heritage Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, 5 of the 9 properties, I believe, are already impacted by the Canada Post decision, so that's going to happen regardless. What I'm hearing is that this is something that in order for, we have a choice, we can just receive the report, or we can receive and refer to staff to direct to the appropriate departments to move the street name change forward. Is there any comments on whether that would be an appropriate motion, or would you like to reword that motion? Kate?
Is that our only option? I'm just wondering because Miss Sobey is, actually, that's not her last name, is it? Is it still, does she carry that last name also?
I believe she does, May Annabelle Sobey.
Because of her age, I'm just wondering if we pass it on to another staff, is it just gonna get lost in the shuffle? Like, I'm just wondering, do we have an option of putting it elsewhere, like having council make a decision?
Antonetta, we do, don't we? We have an option to have a council endorsement package that the Heritage Committee recommends the renaming of the street.
We could, again, through you, Chair Bothwell, I think council may ask some of the same questions we're asking. How will they be financially impacted? Is the town hoping to reimburse them? I mean, council can make that decision. In terms of what Kate mentioned, we were very sensitive to her age, you know, where she is in life. And that's why we have a street sign made already, even if she just wants it for now. But she didn't seem, I know, I understand that that wasn't enough, but we thought it could be a good token in the interim. So we have that just so she has something. We produced that quickly, just again, because of her age and the sensitivity around it. So there was something that we wanted to do quickly to show that, you know, this is important and we want to do something right for you. But yes, I mean, the committee could pass a resolution tonight, and that discussion would then be elevated to council through the CEP package. Again, I'm just worried that we are making recommendations on things that are outside of our scope as a Heritage Committee and may have costs for residents that we haven't fully considered or heard, you know, from all of the impacted residents.
Kate, any comments further?
And that is five of those residents are already going to be impacted. And we're talking about 4 other residents? Is that what we're talking about?
That was my list, right, Bianca?
Through the chair, it sounds like there's 9 residents and then 30 parcels that are owned by different owners that will also have to change information. I don't know if that's insurance. I don't know what kind of fees a farm has, so I can't speak to that. But in total, I believe it is 39 different owners. But they're, yeah.
And I'm questioning that as well, Bianca, because when we looked at the Emily project and those projects with the fire department, if it's a farm parcel that doesn't have a street address, I don't know if they're assessed as part of the other properties with the frontage that they're on. They didn't have frontage on Sobey Road. Most of those parcels did not have frontage on Sobey Road, those farms. They were frontage on Church or 30 Road, many of them. There may have been a few or Park. So I question whether those are assessed parcels with a street address. If they don't have a street address, I don't know what they're changing. And that's where I'm a little confused, where we're adding 30 properties in there that I don't think have a municipal address, a separate municipal address. And did you confirm that they have separate municipal addresses? Because none of them came up when I looked.
I've confirmed with our GIS team that there is 30 parcels with different ownership, and that came up on impact. So I think this is some of the comments we're having about the other departments, like it's outside of our scope. So I'm happy to have them provide more information on that, but that's the information I was provided, that there was 30 parcels that potentially could have insurance and things like that need to be updated. But again, I don't know what a farm needs updated. So that's just that. I'm just trying to give as much of the picture as I can, but it's definitely not my specialty, the GIS data.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned that we had 46 originally, now we're down to 30. And that, like, when I drove it, a number of those parcels and looked at Niagara Navigator, their frontage wasn't on Sobey. Their frontage was on one of the abutting roads. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to provide information to council, that it's accurate and complete, and it actually is verified that has a street address or that they would be impacted. So I think if it's gonna, whatever we choose to do, that information needs to be complete and just clear and correct. That's all. Antonetta?
I just wanted to add, Councillor Bothwell. So I changed it to 39 different owners. There's a couple duplicate owners, but there is still the 46 parcels. But it looks like the additional ones from the 39 are town owned. That was my understanding.
Okay.
So it's 46 in total, and then 39 different owners.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just think, like I said, I think when we looked at the 46, some of the addresses that were originally provided were actually on Church Road, 30 Road, and Park Road. So they're not on Sobey Road. So I think we're still a little bit unclear as to those parcel addresses as well, and what the frontage is. Not just that they're an assessed parcel, but is there frontage on Sobey Road that they would have a street address that is Sobey Road, or is there frontage on one of the abutting streets? Antonetta?
Yeah, through you, Chair Bothwell, I think the other thing to consider that you mentioned is the Emily project. We want to make sure that these don't get attributed a certain address and then they need to change with the Emily project. So that's what we think, again, deferring this maybe to GIS staff to confirm everything that needs to be confirmed, maybe Public Works, maybe some clerks because of the Canada Post. Like, I would just feel uncomfortable making a recommendation as a committee when we don't have all that accurate information and it's not our area of expertise. And there's so many other impacts, fire, ambulatory, the Emily project, et cetera. So I think we need the proper people to weigh in on this, confirm, as you say, like maybe they're 30 farm parcels, but they don't have a municipal address that's been assessed, and they don't, like, I just think, again, we want to help Miss May Annabelle, but I think we have to do it properly. And the best thing is to refer it to other departments who handle these sorts of things.
Thank you. So the motion is to refer to staff to direct appropriate departments to, and I don't know how we're going to word this, to correct the street name, to move the correction to the street name Sobey, SOBYE forward. I'm not sure. How should we word that?
Can they report to council on whether or not the street name should be changed? Or what the impacts of potentially changing the street name would be?
So sorry, I'm thinking the motion is to refer it to the appropriate departments.
Right, for a report to council on the matter.
Okay.
Because you just don't want it to sit there, right? We need a report back to council.
Yeah. Okay, so
my colleagues may not like me after tonight.
Yeah.
Another report for them. I want to be mindful of their workloads and things of that nature, but you know, I think we do have to get to a resolution on this one way or another.
So it's for staff to refer to the appropriate departments to prepare a report to council on the matter. Is that correct, Antonetta, or close?
I think that could work. Peter, do you have would you be okay with a recommendation of that nature? Would it be staff that refers it, or would it be that this committee recommends that it be referred to the appropriate departments? I think that's better because this is a recommendation advisory committee. So I think I might lean more towards that language, but happy for your expertise.
Right, you okay with that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think the motion should be that the committee refer the report to staff. And I think as you had it, report back to council. So that the item be referred to staff.
Committee recommends. Did I see any hands? So it's the committee recommends that staff refer this item to the appropriate departments for a report to council on the matter. Sarah?
Thank you, Counselor. Is it worth adding to that recommendation that with our knowledge as the Heritage Committee that we recommend the name change with the heritage aspect of the concern?
That's a good point. Peter, how can we put that in?
Sorry, I was busy writing. I didn't hear that part.
Okay, so Antonetta, we'd like to identify that the committee supports the name change from a heritage perspective in correcting the error. So how about the committee recognizes or supports?
Well, what if we did that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee supports the name change from a heritage perspective. However, it refers the matter and then the earlier resolution that we had. You know, I think we have one of our very dedicated staff from GIS tuning in tonight, and she's just told us to remind the committee that getting Canada Post to change the address can take years and years, and that they've been dealing with them and they can be very challenging. So we may have absolutely no confirmation when this is going to happen on Canada Post. So even though there is this sort of 5 addresses that are being dealt with through this postal code change, like that, I just want to be clear that will be out of town and town staff's control, and we won't have you know, confirmation when that may happen. And I think, although it may have been hard for Miss Annabelle May or me, Annabelle, we really tried to offer something that was immediate because we knew how challenging something like this could be. So it's unfortunate that it's this hard to get something corrected, but just wanting to manage some expectations, even when it does get referred to the other staff who, as you can see, care so much that they're tuning into our heritage meeting. It's not that easy, unfortunately.
Thank you, Antonetta. Pamela?
Thank you. I just wanted to say I concur with that. I think it's a fair recommendation that Heritage agrees with the change if we can, take it into consideration what another department more qualified would think. So I agree.
Thank you. Any other comments? So the motion's going to read something like, the committee supports that the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee supports a name change from a heritage perspective and recommends that staff refer this matter to the appropriate departments for a report to council. Okay, everybody good with that? I hope you got that, Peter. Pamela, did you have another question or your hand still up? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for that motion, please? Sarah and Mayor Jordan. All in favor of that? That's carried. I know, thank you. And I know May Annabelle was hoping to tune in tonight to watch the proceedings. So just to let her know that the committee is very passionately looked at this matter and very thoroughly looked at this matter. And we've done everything we're kind of trying to do to help resolve it as quickly as possible. And I appreciate the planning director's assistance in this and planning staff. I know you guys have worked hard on this over the last few meetings as well, trying to move it forward. So let's hope that we get it continuing the momentum. So I know it's a long, slow process like the train, but we're on it. So thank you again to everybody for that. That was the last item on the agenda. The next meeting is Bianca, I'm going to have you speak to this because it's October 12th. And normally we do a little bit of an orientation, you were saying, for our new members. There's a open house on the 12th, and we were looking at changing the time of our heritage meeting to 7, I think but depending on how long that actual open house goes. Can you help us on that?
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. So for the new members, we'll be reaching out to you to have some kind of training session. You kind of got thrown in tonight, so I'm sure you have lots of questions. So we're going to have a session for you and kind of talk to you about the processes and then answer any questions, and then a little bit of information on the Heritage Act and heritage protection, and just to kind of get you up to speed on what all those things are, so you can make your comments and decisions the best you can. And then as for the next meeting, due to the election, we've had our scheduled public meeting shift today, which also happens to be our Heritage Committee meeting day. So we're going to try and have our Heritage Committee meeting after the public meeting. So I will confirm that with everyone if that time changes, and then I'll work with Councillor Bothwell to confirm that, and we can discuss a little bit more a game plan if the meeting goes longer, and we can go from there if that sounds good with you, Councillor Bothwell.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if some of the open houses go for 2 hours or so, so it would be a late start. And if we have a large agenda on October 12th, it may end up being a little burdensome. So I don't know, how do committee members feel about that? We can play it by ear. So the option is we plan it for like 7:30. We play it by ear, but then it means if it goes later, we're starting late and we only get through half our agenda. Anne.
I'm just going to suggest that maybe there's a modified agenda with the understanding, knowing that we're starting potentially at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and that we would, have to work tomorrow, so if we could keep that in mind. I know that when I was building the agenda, when I was chair, we would sometimes just move stuff that wasn't urgent.
Sounds like a good suggestion. Bianca, does that sound like a good suggestion? I see Mark shaking his head. Everybody else shaking heads?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Pamela, did you have a question, or is your hand still up from before?
Thank you. No, I have one thing that it probably should have come up in the beginning of the meeting, just something I wanted to bring to the committee before we close out for the evening.
Is it relevant to the agenda?
It's not.
Okay, if it's not relevant to the agenda, the normal process would be to ask for it to be added. We don't normally have a roundtable or any open discussion at these meetings. So if it's not on the agenda, you would ask for it to be added to the agenda.
Okay, and at what point?
So you can do that prior to any of the next meetings. Just ask Bianca, and then she'll just review it with the chair, and it'll get added to the agenda if it's an item of that the committee should be considering.
Okay.
We did at one point talk about new business. New business isn't to introduce new items really to the agenda. It's more of an announcements thing, and we don't have that on our agenda. So right now we don't really have a forum for open discussion. So, we can certainly look at that when we're doing our terms of reference and our strategic priorities at that meeting to look at how we can bring things forward, but normally we don't, if it's not on the agenda, we try to get the item on the agenda so that there's enough preparation for staff and the committee to be able to thoroughly discuss something that comes up. And it also keeps us on track, because if we just end up going all over the place with things that committee members might want to discuss, it ends up not focusing on the agenda at hand. So that's normally the structure of the meetings, but we can certainly, if it's something that you can you want to discuss with staff behind the scenes or myself, feel free to send us an email. If it's something for the agenda for the next meeting, please do provide that to planning staff, and they'll look at getting that put on. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess then what I'm hearing is our next meeting will be October the 12th. It will be following the open house. And we'll try to have a short condensed meeting for that one, taking that into account. And if anything changes in the meantime, we'll make sure that all members are made aware. If that sounds good, I'm supposed to say this meeting is then adjourned. And it's 9:30. I appreciate everybody's patience. It's been a long meeting. Thank you very much for the big agenda. And we look forward to seeing you after the Thanksgiving weekend in October. So have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.